Coming up on episode 370 of Wheel Bearings, we've got the Mazda CX-70, the Lamborghini Huracan Sterrato, the Hummer EV SUV, Mazda's EZ6, Ford's home charging, Enel X Way shuts down in America, Ionna starts building their first charging station, cuts to Ford's BlueCruise pricing, new Ford Expedition, Rivian surviving the hurricane, all that and more with our special guest, Chad Kirchner. This is episode 370 of Wheel Bearings. I'm Sam Labuel-Salmon from Guidehouse Insights.
I am Roberto Baldwin from SAE International.
I am Chad Kirchner and unemployed.
Yeah.
Oh man, that sucks.
It's called freelancing, Chad.
Oh, sorry. That's what they call it. Freelancing.
Yes.
We are free. We do have that option as like in this career that we're, we don't get paid much, and when we get fired, we can just keep getting not paid a lot of money.
Yeah,
actually less money with a lot more stress.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
But it's the option. Like if I worked at like Jack in the Box and I got laid off, I couldn't just freelance hamburgers outside my house.
Well,
I think
you
could.
I probably could actually. And I might make more money.
Set up a grill in your driveway, put up a sign, just like you did as a kid when you had a lemonade stand.
You know what? I'm out. I'm done with this
All
journalism.
right.
Bye. I'm just gonna sell tacos and hamburgers on my front door.
Honestly, I would probably visit a taco stand of yours. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I certainly would.
Yeah.
And you know what? Given that it is TacoTober, give us your pitch, Robbie.
Yep.
All right, TacoTober, 31 tacos in 31 days. I've been doing this since, oh my God, like 15 years now, maybe longer. It was something that a friend of mine, Brian Niffel, told me about. And I've been doing it ever since. And yeah, it's just a fun way to get through October. It's because tacos, you don't have to eat 31 tacos at one sitting. You can eat 31 tacos sometime throughout the month. And, you post them on Facebook or Blue Sky, or I guess if you're still over on Twitter or Threads, if that's a thing you enjoy, or any of the social medias, and get all your friends excited because everyone loves tacos. And another thing is that every year I ask people to donate money to Feeding America during TacoTober, because as a kid who grew up stupid poor, I remember the holidays were super, super tough. And so we would, we get food from from local charities and food banks and stuff, especially during the holidays, and it meant a lot to me and my family. And I think there's a lot, it's a tough time of year for a lot of families, while everyone's having fun, you're just trying to just scrape by. And now you have the added oh, it's the holidays. Now we have to, do all these extra things. So yeah, so if you can do it. And for years, and I can still do it this year, I just haven't really announced it because I haven't even finished last year's album. But for years, if you donate more than $50 to Feeding America, and you send me through email or Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever, a receipt of more than $50, my band Drastic Cats will write a song for you and we'll put it on our next album.
I have had that happen. And it's amazing. And if I knew we were going to talk about it, I would have found the file to play it.
To cue it up. I don't even which song was yours.
If you want to send it to me afterwards, Chad, I can insert
it. I will do that. I will send it to you. Yes.
Was it about cars?
It was. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The car ones are always fun because it's always it's sort of almost the same genre, where it's just do that fun bass line. There's 3 of those now. And I just love writing those songs because they're just yeah. One, two, three, four. On the air, you wanna make a project. Bye.
Yeah.
They always end up sounding like the Cramps. Is how the band the Cramps.
Is there
Yeah,
is there a link that for
I have,
Feeding America? If you want to drop it in the
yeah,
show notes, I will put it in the show notes so everybody can go over there after you listen to the show or while you're
yeah.
listening. Just pull up the show notes in your podcast player and send them some money. And I think right now they're also especially focusing some of the donations on Hurricane Helene relief as
yeah.
well in the southeast.
Yeah, that's a huge issue right now. I think we talked about it. You know what? I will make a new TacoTober 2024 page just because I think people like having a page to look at. So I've had them for 2023. So I'll make one up and I'll send it to you and we'll put it in the show
Okay.
notes and it'll be good times for everyone.
Sounds good. And Nicole was supposed to be back with us today, but I got a text from her yesterday morning that she and Russ were still in Venice because their flight got canceled. So she
No.
should be back with us next week, hopefully.
Oh
But
no, stranded in Venice.
I know,
Oh man.
life is horrible sometimes, but you just got to deal with it.
Yeah.
An extra
That's
day in Venice, it's not.
It always sounds like it's fun, but if you're that person, you're just like,
No, it's. I
no.
was just gonna be. I was
'Cause
just
you're
gonna
just
be
spending
that.
the whole time like on your phone
Yeah,
trying to figure out
yeah.
how to get home.
I was just gonna be that guy. Like we were very fortunate and we were very privileged in
Mhm.
able to do some really cool stuff. But travel problems stink wherever
Oh yeah,
you have them, and they can be compounded when you're in the country you don't have citizenship in, and maybe don't speak the language super well. So it can be stressful. I'm just teasing Nicole
and
because I've known Nicole forever, but yeah, it stings.
yeah. But you're with us today, Chad.
I
And for those in the audience that don't know Chad Kirchner,
That's
tell
unfortunate.
give
No, I'm kidding.
give us a
So
little background on
yeah,
you.
so hi, my name is Chad, and I'm sort of an automotive journalist, content creator. I try to not take myself too seriously. I do take the work I do
Well, nobody else
seriously.
does, so
Yeah, I mean, I do take the work I do seriously. Like that's important, but it's not. Some of our colleagues can kind of get a swollen head about it. So I try to stay humble by making fun of myself. But for the past 4 years, I've been covering almost exclusively electrification through a website and YouTube channel called EV Pulse with the internet's favorite old guy who's not old, Craig Cole. Um,
old at heart.
Old at heart, he's an old soul.
Yes, he is. A wonderful
Un-
soul too.
Unfortunately, he was born about honestly he was born about 40 years too late. I
Yeah.
believe is and unfortunately you need money in order to continue doing a business, and I'm not blowing any smoke here or anything like that. I had a really good experience. We just ran out of money, and so unfortunately Craig and team are looking for jobs. So if anybody needs to hire anybody, I'm available, as well as Craig Cole and two excellent video producers. So
Yeah, Ben and Carmen are
yeah,
awesome. They do
yeah,
great work. They've got a
um,
lot of experience
yeah,
and
absolutely. And like I said, it's just running a business requires a lot of resources, and when you cover electrification almost exclusively, 2020, 2021 was great for finding sponsors and things like that. But now that EVs are quote unquote woke, it's become a little bit more difficult to find that sustained sort of sponsorship money. And my business partner, who is excellent, got into it pretty deep and was like, I can't. He's not independently wealthy like some folks are. He just is a serial entrepreneur, and we all gave it a shot. And it stinks. The site's still up. The YouTube channel is still up.
there's a lot of fantastic content up there.
It'll get fresh content occasionally, because I do want to keep it kind of fresh and updated, because I would like to be able to offer my business partner some money in the future to buy out his half and um, you know kind of keep it going. So it's not going anywhere. It's just that there's no longer really any employees currently working on it. So
So where can we find your stuff going forward
oh
now?
gosh, because I am a middle-aged white guy on the internet, I have to have either a newsletter or a podcast. So I'm going to pimp the newsletter in this case. It's called the Kirchner Report, which actually was inspired by Mr. Craig Cole himself. He really wants me to do and I'm not going to do it, but he really wants me to do a Alex Jones spoof where I sit in front of and talk about like how EVs turn the frogs, gay or whatever, and like get really super mad about it. And I'm like, I can't. But I did steal that name for the newsletter. It's at KirchnerReport.com. It's free to sign up. I'm doing 2 a week. And what do I cover? It's a chance for me to give a lot of opinion, which is really kind of hard to do when you're covering news and everything else. A lot of people get a little shocked when they learn that the people they read for news might have opinions on things. But also, I'm trying to give some expert advice, not nearly as smart as your guys' advice you give, but I'm working on it.
You
And
clearly haven't listened to this show.
and also, just some observations and advice and recommendations around media, automotive media and stuff covering it. So like I'm not sure exactly when this is going to drop, but one of my most recent sort of posts will be I'm probably saving you 10 grand if you read it, because if you're starting a YouTube channel in 2024, you need to know what I'm going to tell you. And it's there for free. An automotive YouTube channel, if you want to start like a fake business business course YouTube, like go do that yourself. But if you want real advice, that's what I'm there for. And I've got some other things I'm working on too. There's a electric focused kind of site that I'm kind of tooling around with. That's is mostly launched, and then I'm also working on a couple of other things. Kind of throwing some spaghetti at the wall right now, see what sticks. I'm going to freelance for a bit, but I really don't want to have to get a real job. I really don't want to have to do that. So, long story short, I'm trying to find ways to avoid doing that. But there's some exciting things coming up that I'm looking forward to covering. I'm sure that you talked about the Scout reveal that's within a week or two from now.
Yeah, couple of weeks.
And we're getting ready for, I'm not going to SEMA, but SEMA stuff's out there, LA Auto Show stuff's out there, and even CES stuff is now starting to get out there. So we're getting into a busy time.
Are you going to the Scout reveal?
I am, yes.
Okay. We should probably have you back after that to talk about that, because unfortunately I won't be able to be there because I'm going to be in Korea that week.
Oh, okay.
So we'll get you back to talk about that.
Afterwards. I'm really looking forward to it. Friend of everybody's, Kathy Graham, was just chatting with me over the weekend about how they're gonna have some current owners there. So it'll be really interesting.
Get Tim Walz?
Ooh.
Well, they can't get. They're not allowed to be political. So,
okay.
That's a fair day.
But they are gonna have some owners there, and I think it's gonna be really interesting to see what current owners think.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't seen it. I don't know what to expect, obviously. Other than
the teaser sketches they put out there, it's clearly inspired by the old Scouts.
And I think they could lean into it. I know that's not what we want to talk about, but I really think they could lean into that.
We can talk about
retro
anything.
Vibe. I think they could really lean into that retro vibe. In some ways, I think the ID Buzz is trying to do that. I hope they're not all priced ID Buzz pricing. But that's Volkswagen's gonna Volkswagen, right?
Yeah.
That's.
But it's encouraging that Scout's based they've got offices in Detroit. They've hired people in Michigan.
I think the plant's going to be in Georgia, right, or South Carolina. I can't remember now.
Yeah, South Carolina, I believe.
Yeah.
But no, just having people working on it that live in Michigan, people go quote unquote up north in Michigan and do up north things. And I think if you have an EV that can excel at up north stuff, kind of like how Rivian does, I think you could have a pretty compelling product.
Yeah. And, for those of you that don't live or aren't familiar with Michigan geography and our habits here, most of the population of Michigan lives in Southeast Michigan, with another big chunk in Southwest Michigan. And then a lot of recreational activity happens in the Northern Michigan, which is anywhere from 200 to 500 miles away. And so, if around here, if you head north on I-75 on any given weekend, pretty much year round, you will see streams of trucks, SUVs, assorted other vehicles, pulling trailers with boats, campers, in the summertime, jet skis, in the wintertime, snowmobiles. And so, that is an extremely popular activity in Michigan, a lot of people, it's Friday afternoons heading north, Sunday afternoons heading south. So, having a vehicle, an electric vehicle that can handle those kinds of tasks would be, that would be, something that would kind of set them apart if it really could handle those tasks, with minimal charging hassle.
Well, and what I've seen, 2 points to that I would really like to make, which is one, last fall around this time, Craig and I did a little bit of an adventure with some help from Nissan. We visited all 5 Great Lakes in a single day
Mhm.
in an EV. We
That
took
was
an
that
Aria.
was a cool video.
We took an Aria. Most of the time spent was devoted, honestly, to filming and not charging. But what I really thought was impressive was the charging situation has gotten a lot better north of Detroit. It's not great, but there are places, especially more of the tourist focused towns, that are sitting on reasonably decent DC fast chargers. And if you can get all the way up to Mackinac, there is all sorts of charging options for you there as you head into the Upper Peninsula. Upper Peninsula is still a little bit barren, other than Tesla superchargers, but now that, like, with Ford has access to those, it's not as big of a deal. But also, I think that for people who've never been, quote unquote, up north in Michigan, I've noticed a lot of parallels to people who, like, go out to the desert in California on the weekends. Like,
Mhm.
it's not complicated off-roading. We're not talking going to Moab and running a Class 7 trail. Like, we're talking, 2 tracks and stuff like that. And that's a place that I think a lot of people do their air quote off-roading, and I think that's sort of, I think, the sweet spot. But I think it's the sweet spot in gas cars too, for the off-roading kind of vibe. Like, if you want something really serious, you're gonna buy a Jeep that might break down, or a Land Cruiser or something like that. And if you're or a Forerunner, Tacoma, things like that. But for most people, they kind of want this sort of in between. And I think that's really where, like, EVs can really make a lot of sense.
And the silence of an EV as you're driving through the woods is really pretty cool. Roll down the
Yeah.
windows and just listen to nature, and not have an engine making any noise, not scaring off the wildlife.
And instant torque. I
Yeah.
mean, like, there's, I when you off road in a manual, like in like a Tacoma, there's a clutch, basically a clutch override start that you can use the electric starter to kind of pull you up a hill. Um, and which is an interesting thing, and you kind of have a direct connection with a manual transmission to the wheel. I mean, you don't technically, but you do. But an automatic, like, the torque converter, like, it's slushy. It's called a slush box kind of for a reason, and we don't notice it much on modern cars. But when you're climbing a rock, you notice the delay between your foot doing anything and the wheels doing anything. And with an EV, you lose all of that. Like, you just have throttle input, acceleration.
Although if you are rock crawling, that can be challenging, because what you actually want in those kinds of conditions, as opposed to just running down a trail, is the ability to modulate it a little bit more. So an automatic actually makes it a little bit easier,
Yeah.
And I've
Well, if you're a
Well,
proper person, you use a manual, but that's just me.
well, and also some of that's tuning too.
yeah,
People kind of want their accelerator to be an on-off switch, especially in EVs,
yeah.
where I'm okay with something a little bit more progressive.
But
Yeah.
I mean, I went to a Magna tech demo day that they did at Hollyoaks ORV Park last spring. I think you did you go to that one?
Yes,
Yeah.
I did.
And they, one of the things they showed us was, having a mode with they had a Gladiator, with an electric drive system, and they had a simulated 4 low. Basically, what it was changing the throttle mapping between the pedal and the response you get from the electric motors to make it feel more like a 4-wheel drive low system. So you had that easier to modulate, when you're trying to maneuver over those rocks.
Yeah, and then the regen
Yeah.
was able to kind of help with
Yeah.
that sort of simulated feeling. And gosh, this could lead into a really nerdy tangent, but they're doing something kind of
Tangent
similar with
thrusts.
they're kind of doing something with Ioniq 5N, right? Like,
Mhm.
in that fake simulated gear mode, like, they're doing torque limiting and remapping things to make it feel like a gas powered car, and
Yeah, we talked about that
it's
one last
cool.
week. I had it a couple weeks ago. We talked
And
about it last
it's
week.
amazing. It's
Yeah,
amazing. It's my favorite. It's my favorite EV
yeah,
for I mean, by far.
yeah.
We won't.
Man,
We
I
won't.
have don't even get me started. I haven't driven it yet.
But you're in. But you're in a Hummer right now. So there you go.
That's true. Oh yeah,
You've
yeah. I
you've
got
killed
the same thing.
Yeah, but
you've killed at least one electrified America charging station. So there you go.
and with with the Hummer, of course, it's heavy enough that when it comes to rock crawling, it simply just crushes the rocks. So you don't actually have to go
Yeah,
over the
easy
rocks; it
crash.
just
It
crushes
has
them.
a low. I've taken them off road and up rocks and stuff. It
Yeah.
does have a low, and you can kind of put it in low, and it's.
All right. Let's get into what we're driving this week then. Robbie, let's start with that Hummer.
All right, so I'm going because the Hummer is so big, but not big. That's the crazy thing about the Hummer. It's so huge, but not huge. I'm gonna split
Yes.
this puppy up into two parts, just because I've only had it for a few days. Um, so you get it, and when I forgot that it was coming to my house. Just I knew it was coming, but it was you're just kind of running around during the day, and I opened the door to go get the mail, and it was like in front of my house. I'm like and it sort of startled me because it's just tall. It's just this big giant like block
It's very
of
wide
like
too.
battery and metal and rubber and plastic and glass and whatnot. Um, and so I was like, all right, well, here we go. And you get in it and you feel like you're driving a giant delivery truck or a bus or something. You're just sitting so darn high. And when you're driving it, you're like, okay, I'm really high. I'm really high. That said, there's two parts to your brain. There's the childish, like I want to have fun, goofy kid part, and then there's the adult. Oh, I have to pay my taxes and my bills and not eat candy for breakfast part. Um, the Hummer is there is a constant battle in your brain when you're driving the Hummer because the childish, goofy kid part is like, haha, this is dumb and stupid and this is so much fun. I want to go drive over everything. I want to go off roading. I want to you know do big dumb truck things. And then the adult part of you is like, oh, this thing is so incredibly inefficient. What a pain in the butt it is to park, and not because it's hard to maneuver, because it's all-wheel steering. It's actually incredibly easy to maneuver. It's very not I don't want to say nimble, but it gets around really easily. It's really easy to like pull into a spot. It's really easy to do a U-turn. It has a way smaller turning radius than my Ionic 5, just because
Chevy Spark has a
yeah.
turning radius of a Spark.
Yeah, it's just so it's like woo. So U-turns are great. Parking lots, no big deal. It's just that now you got to get between those lines, and you're like right on the edge of those lines. So you're getting out of yesterday. I had to get out of the truck by opening the door just a little bit, and then getting on the foot rail, because you need that to get into the thing, and sort of scooching out, closing the door, then jumping off the foot rail onto the ground because that's just how I had to park because of life and regular cars aren't that big. So there's that sort of thing. You get in it, it's pretty comfortable. um it's it's interesting because you open the back and you think to yourself, why isn't there more room in the cargo area for a vehicle this big? It doesn't, like, you open it up and just doesn't feel as big as it should be when you look at the vehicle, and then you realize that it's actually just really 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 tall. And it sort of throws you off. Like, I'm like, this is like the same size, like, in cabin area. And I haven't looked at the numbers, but this is but it feels like the same size in cabin area as my Ionic 5, my little car. And a lot of room is taken up by that hood because he's big, long hood and has a frunk, and it's a lot. You can put a lot of stuff in it, or you can take all the panels off the top. Again, this is the kid part where you're like, I get to drive around. This is the only convertible EV you can drive. You take the panels off, you shove them in the frunk, and they have little bags that you can shove it in. And you're like, oh, this is great. This is wonderful. I can drive around. Then you realize it's 95 degrees, and you pull over and you put the panels back on because you're like, I'm gonna wait until it's not burning my retinas when I'm driving down the road. The problem with the panels is that they're clear, and and even though they are tinted, you still get some heat through them, which is not ideal. I think everyone was really excited about glass roofs until everyone realized that they're just, it's you're in a greenhouse is what you've created. You
Pretty
create the
much.
greenhouse, and there's still a little bit of glare that comes through. And if they don't have some sort of covering for it, they're kind of a pain in the butt after a while, especially if you live in a region where it's hot. If you live in the Southwest, or maybe I guess Florida, I'm assuming.
I will say though that every single press car should come with a glass roof. I wouldn't personally buy one with a glass roof, but
You know what? Because you
because
can
you
cameras.
can mount you can
It's
mount
it yeah.
cameras.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love them because you can mount cameras to them, but then they're like, oh, I don't want this in my real life. But they're the best for mounting cameras.
Yes.
So you have that, and you're like, yeah, I'm driving around in this big. It's just a nonstop battle in my brain about this vehicle, more so than a lot of other vehicles. Because part of me is just like, it's got this 200 and almost 50 kilowatt hour battery pack, like 212 of it, 210, 214, whatever is usable. That's so much battery pack. That is just, you could make 4 Chevy Bolts with this thing. It's just the amount of battery that you're just taking. And the vehicle I'm driving right
You
now,
could make 40 Priuses.
you can make 40 Priuses. The Hummer I have right now, 312 miles of range. I mean, oh, that's great. But it's also from a 200 and like 10, 12, 210, 215 usable capacity battery pack. So it's not efficient at all. Right now I'm getting like 1.6, 1.7 miles per kilowatt hour. Uh, Again, I'll just go back to my Ioniq 5. My Ioniq 5 gets a 303 or 30 something, and it has a much smaller battery pack. And when you look at only range, and this is sort of the issue where people are just looking at the range of EVs, and you don't think about the efficiency of the vehicle. What happens is now you're paying more money for charging, and you're also sitting at charging more often. So if it's less efficient, then you're going to be spending more money for it. It's just like a gas car. And that's the whole thing, is the Hummer is exactly what the Hummer should be. That's the crazy part. This
Mhm.
is like, this not
What
like this is it's big and goofy and inefficient. It's the Hummer. It's exactly what it's supposed to be.
what's the usable on that 212?
Somewhere around there, yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say 215. I'm gonna do some math while you guys chat for a second.
So yeah, so it is yeah. So I haven't done a mileage run yet. I will say that the infotainment system is painfully slow, just painfully slow, because it's OpenGL. They're like, oh, we can render things, and you go to switch the modes, and it has to turn off the display you're looking at, load a new display to show your Hummer like bursting through like some sort of glass something, I don't know, and like boom, now we're on the moon, or boom, now we're in the desert, or boom, we're now we're in somewhere else for all the different modes that
Yeah,
there are with cars.
it doesn't have
It's
enough
not like
processor.
you're like, okay, this is kind of cool, but I really just want to know what drive mode I'm in, and I don't want to wait a few seconds to figure that out.
Yeah, it's using Unreal, but it doesn't have enough horsepower behind it. Because even when the headlights turn on at night, like when the automatic switch over to dark,
Yeah.
like the instrument cluster, because you're on the moon in the instrument cluster, like it shows a lunar sunset, which is really cool, but it's so slow
Yeah, it's
and framey and just
And because
yeah.
that stuff's not
not great.
pre-rendered, it's rendered in real time.
Yeah,
And
Right.
they
it's
were like, look, it renders in real time. I'm like, yeah, but now it's rendering in real time, but not in real time. And that's the problem, is that, so because of all this, I'm trying to use the Google Maps that are built into it, and I'm telling Google Maps, and I'm hitting it to say something to it, and there's just this delay before I can even say anything. And then finally it's all boom. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then you say the thing, and then it waits a little while, and then it gives me where I want to go. And I got so frustrated yesterday because I really just wanted to use the in-car thing. And fortunately, this Hummer still has support for CarPlay. So I finally just gave up and went to CarPlay and used Google Maps in CarPlay instead of the native, Android Automotive that was running in the Hummer, because it was just so slow. I was like, this is frustrating. And now I'm looking at the display longer than if I had just like used Google Maps and my iPhone in the
Yeah.
first place. So that's the fact that this is the vehicle price is $104,000, and I feel like the infotainment screen is running at like ID4 when it was having problems speeds. is I don't know. I feel like people are going to get a little irritated by that, especially in an EV where people kind of want, you know, something like that to work.
So if you take that Hummer you're in, I'm going to assume 315 miles of range.
312.
312. I rounded up for the sake of argument. 80%. So basically, you have the top. If you do a 10 to 80% charge, so the bottom 10% and the top 20% is 30% of the battery. So realistically, that 10 to 80% range gets you 220.5 miles. If you were to go take that Hummer to the GM Energy Flying J Pilot canopied full super duper new thing that they're pushing, that is actually one in Toledo, reasonably near my house. You pay 65 cents a kilowatt. That's $98 to go from 10 to 80% at a DC fast charger.
That's yeah, it's very expensive. And then when
That's
I was
220 miles of range for $100. That's
yeah,
not.
yeah,
That's not. I know people are charging home, and if you can afford a Hummer, it's probably doesn't matter to you. But that is ridiculous.
yeah, no, it's very it's I took it to charge yesterday at an EA station, and initially it was doing like three something. And it was great because like, oh, but it was still gonna take like over an hour to charge. I was like, this
Yeah,
is bonkers that it's taking. And then it just like shot down to like the 30s
yeah.
and
You
then the
thermal.
high 20s.
You thermaled it. It got too hot.
Yeah, it was also like
This
95 degrees out. So there's, there was a lot of things working against it. But for a shiny moment, I was like, well, all right, well, at least it's charging quickly. Psych.
there's a lot of people who would probably disagree with the statement that I'm going to make, but the Hummer buyer and the G class buyer are the same type of people.
Yeah, no, I think yeah,
Different,
about right.
maybe different
Different parts of the
classes or different.
country, maybe.
Yep,
Yeah,
but they're buying the cars for the exact same reason.
yeah, yeah. And so yeah, so anyway, so yeah, I'll have more information next week about it. Again, on one hand, I'm like, this is ridiculous and goofy and fun, and I want to go drive over everything. And then on the other hand, the part of me was just like, ah, come on.
Well,
But you look again, but I'm saying, oh, come on. As somebody who would, if this was a regular gas Hummer, I would be thinking the exact same thing. Like, come on. Except for the infotainment system. Oh, and the rear tailgate for some reason doesn't want to work. But except for the infotainment system just being laggy, it's just like, all right, yeah. I mean, it's cool the way they've had it set up. It's 400 volts. It becomes 800 volts when you charge it, so that's really cool. The fact that it's all-wheel steering, you can do crab walk, like all these fun things are part of this vehicle, and you're like, hee 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 hee, hee. And they're like, oh wait, but it's so inefficient. Like
Yeah, so
again,
like we don't talk enough. I mean, we don't. I mean, we do, but I think we as an industry don't talk enough about efficiency, because I think that's really where we're going to see the gains that we need to see for EV adoption. We need people to understand that efficiency is far more important than overall range. Um, but I'm with you on the Hummer entirely, and I think that there's a group of people out there that don't think that EVs can be fun. And the
no,
Hummer's
it's and
fun.
again,
The
it is
Hummer's
fun. It's
hilarious.
fun and and
Like
and
it is.
hilarious and goofy. And well, you know what it makes me want? It makes me want a smaller Hummer. Like if it were like three
yeah,
quarters or
well,
half the size,
and
I'd
and
be
this
like,
is this is this is this is what I've said on numerous occasions. You know, if when GM decided, okay, we're going to build EVs, we're going to bring back the Hummer brand as an EV. Instead of this vehicle, what they should have built was an electric version of the Hummer HX concept from 2009. Yeah, and I don't know if you guys remember this, but this was a Hummer concept that they launched in 2009, just before early 2009, just before they went through Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and it was basically a Wrangler sized Hummer. So it was smaller than the H3. It was basically a Wrangler sized Hummer. If they had introduced that thing in 2021, the same time
oh
that
my
they
god,
introduced this thing, they would have had a vehicle. This is at the time when Ford was bringing out the Bronco. Wrangler was still doing great. They could have jumped right into that market segment with the only EV in that segment, and they could have kicked ass. I mean, it would have been brilliant. They couldn't have. They probably would have sold as many of those things as they could possibly build,
oh yeah. And you know what's
and it would have been
oh,
way more useful.
when I went to the GM design studio, I don't know, a while back, there's an article about it on Ars Technica where they showed off their little EV truck and they did a tease of something that is about the HX. It had Hummer headlights. They pulled up the little corner. and he saw the Hummer headlights, and it was about the size of the Hummer HX concept. Everything else was covered in a sheet, and it probably, who knows, it was probably just blocks of wood. But like they pulled it up, and the very front in the corner had the Hummer headlights, and I was like, oh, something smaller and funner and funner. Something small and sort of adventure-y. No, I think they would have killed if the Hummer HX concept. If it had come out, oh my God, can you imagine? Like, I'm going to take the doors off and the top off and all this stuff, and I'm going to feel a little bit better about the fact that I don't have a 200, and 50 kilowatt hour battery pack sitting underneath me. No, I think they would have. They would have killed with this thing, and it's unfortunate that they were like, well, let's just do the big thing.
Well, Raptor is my favorite pickup truck. I mean, hands down, Raptor's my favorite pickup truck.
Which one? The F-150 or the Ranger?
Well, initially there was only one. When it was like that whatever. Never mind.
F-150.
But when it was the only one, when there was only one, it was great. The Ranger Raptor's better.
Yeah,
like it's just you drive it and you're like, oh, it's a Raptor, but it's better. And I think that's where the size comes into it, because like when I drive the big Hummer, like, oh, I'm ready to go invade Canada, like that'll be fun.
Yeah.
And it does drive a heck of a lot smaller than it is, like because that rear wheel steering is absolutely game changing on a vehicle that size, but it's still wide AF, and getting it into parking spots. I did the first drive in San Francisco, crossing the Golden Gate Bridge. We were going against rush hour, so we only had the 2 lanes. And because we only have the 2 lanes and it's pretty narrow, like I'm like the barriers, like it feels like the barriers like right here next to my face.
Yeah, either barrier or
this isn't
the fence.
Yeah, which I know this is an audio only thing, so you can't tell. And then like the San Francisco Bay is like just out the other side. Like it feels massive, but the 4-wheel steering, it's I want everything to have 4-wheel steering.
Anything big should have 4-wheel steering. I wish my Kona had 4-wheel steering when I'm driving it after this, and it is a game changer. And I really do think, and and the same thing with Toyota. If they had brought out the little mini FJ Cruiser EV, I still think the VinFast VF3 when it comes out. I know that we're all like, well, VinFast is essentially early '90s Hyundai right now, but I don't know, man. I might buy that VF3. If they get the VF3 and it has like a ridiculous lease like the one right now, the VF9, is that what we're selling? VF8, sorry, the VF8. I'm gonna go down. There's one down the street. I'm just gonna go down and get a VF3.
You know what would save Nissan? Would absolutely save Nissan? Xterra.
Oh yeah,
an electric Xterra.
Oh,
just do it.
Yeah,
they just need to do it.
Or a Pulsar.
They won't.
Bring back the Pulsar. T-tops.
They might.
And the cool retro futuristic styling.
Yeah.
Pulsar. It's even got that right cool name. I mean, the car is just begging to be.
Oh, that is a good. Yeah, you're right. Yes.
Everything about the Pulsar. I mean, not the quality of the original Pulsar, but the actual like, hey, we're bringing the Pulsar name back. Pretty cool.
All right. Let's see, Chad. One of the things that we do on the show here is we have a little contest to guess the destination fees on vehicles.
Yep.
So why don't you go ahead and guess take the first guess at the destination fee for the Hummer?
So General Motors tends to not be the worst offender. I do think it's hilarious though if you do museum delivery of a Corvette, you pay $995 plus they still charge you the destination fee. I think that's an awesome way to double dip, even though you're going right to the factory to get it.
You're picking it up from a guy who's like screwing. He's like, hold on, 5 minutes.
Well,
5 minutes.
Well, if you give them $5,000, they'll let you assemble your own engine. I don't want to buy a car that I put together. I'm just putting that out there.
I don't want a new car that I put together.
I did get to back in 2010, I think, or 9. I did get to assemble an LS9 when they were doing those builds at the facility in Wixom before they moved that line down to Bowling Green. So there's somebody out there with an LS9 that I built.
Did they let you sign it? Could you
No,
would people know?
the guy who was overseeing me got to put his nameplate on it, so I didn't get to put my own name.
I wonder if it's still out there.
Maybe.
Everybody with an LS9, go reach out to Sam and see if it's theirs. I don't know how he'll notice. I don't know how he'll notify. I'm gonna guess I'm gonna guess 1895.
All right, Sam.
I'm pretty sure it's 1995.
Sam is closer because it's $22.95.
Oh,
I
It's
take back everything I said.
so expensive.
yeah.
22. The
Well, I
vehicle
mean,
standard
it's
104.
9,000 pounds they got to transport.
That's true.
Yeah,
Yes.
I guess you're paying per pound. So if
Yeah.
you're paying per pound, it actually makes sense. That means
Yeah.
every other vehicle though that, that GM
Because
sells should
those,
be
those things are so
expensive.
heavy. If you ever see them on the truck being shipped from the factory, they typically only 2 or 3 of those on a truck.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that adds to the cost.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that
Wow, that's a lot
22.95.
of money.
Yeah, but I mean, you're paying for, it starts at 104. The one I have is 109 because it
Sure, but
has
we
the
all
sky panels, the color, a dual level charge cord, which is 350, and yeah, some other stuff. I don't know. I
So
haven't charged it at my house yet. I took it to the charging station because I'm just like, oh
fry,
man,
fry the electrical system in your house too.
I'm sure it'll be fine. I mean,
I bet though that the car Sam you're driving has I don't know if I'll be able to guess the destination charge, but I bet it's less than
We'll see.
that.
tell us about
Yeah.
your fancy car, Sam.
Well, I had 2. I had one that I just had for a long weekend. It was delivered on Friday afternoon, picked it up on Monday afternoon. And then I had, my usual full week car. So the full week one was the Mazda CX-70 with the 3.3 liter turbo 6-cylinder. You know, we've talked about it before. It's a CX-90 minus the third row.
Okay. There you go.
Everything
Good
else
job.
that applies to the CX-90 applies directly to the CX-70, except they left out the third row seat.
But
If
they
you
kept
like
the
me
third
and you
row.
don't have a lot of friends, you get the CX-70. It's for people
Yeah.
without friends
And you have you get
or children.
lots of cargo space in the back. So the cargo space is fantastic. But then if you just fold down the third row in the CX-90, you get the same cargo space. So I'm not sure you've actually gained anything.
Yep.
But that 6-cylinder engine, it's lovely, 340 horsepower. Typical Mazda, beautiful interior, really. And, this one was the premium plus trim. So it had, I don't know if it's Alcantara or some sort of other microfiber finish on the, some sort of faux suede finish on the dashboard and other areas. Had a tan interior, really beautiful interior. As usual, Nicole hates the infotainment system because of the center control knob. But and when you're using the Mazda part of the system, there's no touchscreen functionality. You have to use the center control knob, which I'm fine with. I don't mind it, but I know some people hate that. If you're using CarPlay or Android Auto, it activates the touchscreen, so you can use it either way. The one that I had, let's see, had 8-speed automatic transmission. It said 340 horsepower, 369 foot-pounds of torque. The seats are very comfortable, lots of room in the second row. 21-inch wheels on there. It's rated at 25 miles per gallon combined. I actually got 27 with it, which is surprisingly good. It for a larger, upper mid-size, SUV, it's great. It's really lovely. And given the premium feel of this thing, the total price tag of $57,920, not bad at all. It's pretty reasonable.
Reasonable car for reasonable people who want to do reasonable things.
Yeah. The color, kind of boring. It's the rhodium white premium. You can get it in Soul Crystal Red, which is really the only color anyone should ever buy any Mazda in.
This feels like this color is just going to disappear in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Where's my car? Oh, crap.
Or there's also a darker red that they have that on the CX-70 and CX-90, which is also really nice. But Soul Crystal Red is still the best one. So $57,920. Guesses on delivery charge?
$13.95.
$11.95.
$13.75.
Yeah.
Well, unless we're playing Jeopardy, Robbie, and then you're wrong because you went over.
Oh
Yeah.
no, that's
Well,
the price. We used to do Prices Right, but I kept
Oh, Price
cheating.
is Right. I mean, yeah.
I would just let the
Oh,
person go first, and then I say like $1 before
$1.
or a
Oh,
dollar. I
okay.
just say $1.
yeah.
The CX-70. I need your audience to understand that it looks identical to the CX-90. Like
It is. I mean,
it
the bodywork
is.
is exactly the same. It is literally a CX-90 without the third row seat installed. That
Is
is
it
Yeah,
that is the
cheaper
only
in any
difference.
way? Is it like $10 cheaper?
That's
$20
a good
cheaper?
question. I'm not even sure. Let's see.
while he's glancing at that, I'll say the third row cup holders still exist in the
Yes, they are.
CX-70.
They didn't change any of the molding trims in the back there or anything like that.
I think the PHEV powertrain in that is still not refined enough to recommend, at least from the one that I drove on the launch. That was my biggest complaint on the CX-90. So it might be the cheaper gas version is the way to go with this.
So let's see. So CX-90. So CX-70 Premium Plus starts at $48,900. The CX-90 um, 3.3 Premium Plus starts at 49,400. So you're paying about $500 more for that third row seat. So
So it's a
if you want to
$500
if you want to
option.
save $500 and you don't need the third row, get the CX-70.
There you go. Or you
But
can get the CX-70 and get $500 in other options,
there you go.
like a
Absolutely.
better paint job.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for let's see, the Soul Crystal Red, $595. So
Boom,
there you go.
boom. See, we just made the the business case for the CX-70.
Yeah. All right. And then the car that I had just for the weekend was slightly different. So the CX-70, obviously SUV, but not really intended to go off road. The other car that I had, generally in its typical form, clearly not intended to go off road. But the one I had was the off road edition. It was the Lamborghini Huracan Sterrato,
Strato.
which is it's the final edition of the
It's its
Huracan.
final form of the
Yeah,
Huracan. It finally reached its final, like a Dragon Ball Z or Pokemon.
yeah.
This is the final form, the
I
most
love this.
powerful of the Huracans.
I love the 60th anniversary badge on this with the little devil
The
kind
little
of
the little bull
coming out
ears,
of the
bull
60.
horns.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the bullhorn devil or whatever.
This summer at Monterey Car Week, Lamborghini unveiled the Temerario, which is the replacement for the Huracan. The Huracan's been around since 2013. The Sterrato, is in many ways, I think actually probably, unless you want something that would be a good track car, the Sterrato is actually probably the one that you want if you want a Huracan for a daily driver. And let me explain why. So, as I said, this is the off-road variant, kind of like the Porsche 911 Dakar. So it's been lifted 1.7 inches. It's got 19-inch alloy wheels with all-terrain Bridgestone Dueler tires on there. And if you're going to drive this in Michigan, for example, or any place else where roads are, where the pavement is often of lower quality than some of the dirt trails that you might find in other parts of the world, this is actually the Huracan that you want. The It has the same 5.2 liter V10 engine, naturally aspirated, which is absolutely marvelous engine. I mean, I like, yeah,
Yeah,
I love
amazing.
EVs, but an engine like this, it just sounds so good with 8,500 RPM redline. And what's interesting is when you first started up, Cole, the digital tack, it shows the red line at only 6,000 RPM until the engine gets up to temperature, and then it lets you have that full 8,500, and it just sounds fantastic. When you rev it all the way up over 8,000, it's so good. The 7-speed dual clutch transmission. The last time that the Huracan and its predecessor, the Gallardo, shared their platforms with with their contemporary Audi R8 siblings. So they had the same powertrains and everything. And I remember the first time I drove an R8 back in about 2008. it had the old R-tronic transmission. And I remember taking a tour of the factory in Neckarsulm, Germany, where they built the R8, and you'd see the transmissions, those R-tronic transmissions, on the rack, getting ready, waiting to be installed in cars. And the case had both the Lamborghini and Audi logos cast on it, so it was the exact same component, same engines and everything. And that was not a great transmission. It was great if you were on the track. So that was a 6-speed manual gearbox with F1 style automated shifting. So it was a single clutch at low speeds. If you're trying to just drive it around town, it was terrible. It was like being in a car with someone who was driving a manual transmission for the first time.
Herky jerky.
Not the case with this current generation dual clutch transmission. It's fantastic. It just goes very smooth, really nice. And when you start the thing up, you press the start button, put your foot on the brake, press the start button. There's no, on the center console, there's just reverse, neutral, and manual. And then to put it in, there's no drive button. To go forward, you just tap the right hand shift paddle, and that puts it in first gear. And then you can shift manually or let it shift automatically. Works great either way. The visibility out of this car is not great to the rear, because for the Sterrato, they put, since it's designed to go off-road, they put a snorkel intake, with the air intake on the top above the roof, and goes down into the intake plenums. And so rear visibility is non-existent in this thing, except from the side mirrors.
I mean, everyone's behind you anyway, so it's not like they're going to catch up. So
yeah,
like, someone's catching up to me.
unless they're driving, something like a Hyundai Ioniq 5N, in which case, it actually gets 0 to 60 faster than this does.
Yeah.
But this sounds better than the 5N. And forward visibility, also not great, because from your seating position, the roof actually extends fairly far forward. So if when you're at an intersection, if you want to see the traffic lights, you got to lean forward to see the traffic lights. But if you're just going down a back road, it's fine. It's perfect. This thing, all-wheel drive. Like I said, 602 horsepower from the 5.2 liter V10. It's fantastic. I love driving this thing. The ride quality was shockingly good for what I would expect of a Lamborghini sports car, even on pavement that was typically Michigan bad.
Like you said, this is the car to get.
Yeah.
Well, it has to be comfortable, because you have to have the softer suspension for the off-roading stuff. We're going back. I hate to go back to Raptor, but that's the Raptor trick.
Yeah,
that's the best riding F-150 because of the off-road stuff.
Yeah. So you get 5.7 inches of ground clearance in there, which is surprisingly good for a car like this. Or actually, sorry, 6.7 inches.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. And the tires have actual sidewall on there, so it's not going to get blown out every time you hit a pothole. It was actually really fantastic to drive. Clearly, the limits, the handling limits, are not going to be as good as what you would get on other Huracans, because it's on those Bridgestone Dueler tires. If you're going to take it to the track, this is not the one you want. But if you want,
but you're not. That's the thing. Who is buying a Lamborghini to take it to the track? 3 people.
Yeah. But if you want a daily driver, this would be the one to get. And
it's got roof racks. You can put your bike on it.
It's got a roof rack on there. You can put a bike on there. Your canoe, your kayak, your paddle boards,
snowboard.
Whatever.
The worst part, though, is that because it's a limited edition one, nobody's going to daily drive it. Just the press cars.
They built 1,499 of them. They're all done now. And it's the base price for the Huracan Sterrato, $273,000. $273,177 to be precise.
Two and a half 2.5 Hummers.
Yeah,
Worth it.
or
Worth it.
Worth it.
or over 4.5 Ionic 5Ns, which
4.5.
to remind you,
Wow.
3.2 seconds 0 to 60 versus 3.4 for the Sterrato.
But doesn't have roof racks. Just selling for the Ionic.
That's a good point.
5N.
You don't.
I mean, you can buy roof
Yeah,
racks for it, like
but
$700.
it doesn't come from the
$400.
factory with roof racks.
I mean, the thing holding me back is they didn't do a Spider version. If they would have done a Sterrato Spider, I'd have bought it.
Okay. Well, for what the Sterrato costs, you probably could have kept EV Pulse running a little longer.
Ouch.
Oh,
Ouch.
damn.
But
True.
that
True.
$273,000 is just the starting point. This thing had $111,000 of options on there, of which something like $63,000 paint options. So the orange paint on this thing, the Arancio Zanto paint, $14,000. And then in addition to that, this one also had the Sterrato, what do they call it? The Sterrato livery on the front. So the Sterrato livery consists of a series of white and black triangles that are painted on. So they're not stickers like you get on the Dakar Rally or the 911 Dakar. It's actually painted. So it's
Nice.
hand painted. That was $23,600. And then on the wheel arch extensions and the rocker panels, they have this Sterrato protective paint. So it's something to help protect these parts against stone chips and stuff when you're blasting down your favorite dirt road. That's another $17,100.
Is it just Linux? Like, could I just go Linux it?
Probably.
Okay.
But who knows? And then on the hood of this one, because this was for the 60th anniversary of Lamborghini. The first Lamborghinis were built in 1963. They have this lovely 63 logo that's painted on the hood. So it's literally the number 63 painted on the hood in matte black. $7,400. And then let's see. If you want to connect your smartphone to get Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, $3,600.
That's cheap.
Yeah. The carbon ceramic brake calipers, those are actually cheap at $1,400.
That's pretty good, actually.
The sports seat,
you're gonna want that.
$7,600. Let's see what else we got on here. That's
The sports seats. Hey, you don't need the sports seats.
the fire extinguisher is only $900, which is nice.
Well, you don't want to die.
No,
So
absolutely.
I mean, I feel like I'm worth at least $900.
Yeah.
At least $850.
Yeah. So all in price, bottom line, $384,394.
So a lot.
A little bit, yeah. I checked Zillow this morning to compare what they think my house is worth right now. It was only $381,000.
So you could trade your house right now for it.
That's true. And my house won't
Straight
get
trade.
0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds. So.
Yeah. You can live in a car.
So
That's right. You can't drive a house. Well,
Can't
you
drive
can't
a house.
drive. You can drive some houses, but yeah.
So
As Chad has mentioned before, you can't drive your house.
this thing is EPA rated at 13 city, 18 highway, 15 combined. So there's a $2,100 gas guzzler tax included in there. Do you want to take a guess at the destination charge?
Oh, let's see. Well, you got to put all those things on it. I'm gonna say $13.95 again. No, wait, $11.95.
$14.95.
Well, you got the 95 right.
Okay,
Uh-oh.
sweet.
$3,695 for delivery.
Oh my gosh.
Do they put it on a 747? Like, what's
They
the deal?
might. They might very well do that.
They might.
They wrap it in chamois.
Yeah. I mean, this thing was, this thing's kind of bonkers.
Chad won, by the way.
It sounds so good when you rev up that V10 engine. I had a blast driving this car.
I mean, the notoriously visual medium that is podcasting, I know nobody can see these, but I'm looking through your photos, and I think that it just looks so ridiculous. Like, I think you have to pay for the paint, the
Oh,
graphics of the
absolutely.
63 and stuff like. I think you have to do it because it just makes the car look more ridiculous. And back to Robbie's dual-brained thing earlier, like, it's so cool. It's just cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I think about like what our current state of billionaires buy versus what they could buy, I'm just disappointed in the human race because you could just buy like 10 of these if you're a billionaire and be like, hee hee hee, have your friends over, build a track in your backyard.
Yeah.
Instead, they're just doing really stupid things like buying like Twitter and stuff.
Yeah.
Just wasting their money.
Or
when they
$500
could,
million yachts,
or a yacht, like a boat. What do you do? Like it's just a
Well, like
petri
the
dish on the
new, I
water.
mean,
Buy an awesome sailboat or something. Come on.
I mean, this is really probably too cheap for a billionaire. I mean, you got to get to like that new Bugatti. That's
yeah.
No, you get
that's
this
you
because
know
you're just like, yee-hoo! This is your daily driver. This
Yeah.
is your Honda
yeah.
Civic, and your
This is
and this is your
what
your 2004 Toyota Corolla that you drive
And
around.
this thing actually has a decently sized front trunk as well. I mean, you could put, a couple of backpacks, or, you could put enough stuff in there for a weekend getaway with
You could put a top case on
partner.
the roof racks. Go away for the
Yeah,
weekend.
well, I mean, you're gonna put the snowboards and skis up there, or your bikes.
Yeah.
It's the perfect Michigan car.
It's the perfect
Yeah.
Michigan car.
Exactly.
It's a perfect all-around daily driver. I don't know why people aren't buying this.
Yeah.
Who are billionaires?
I mean, the biggest downside is, and we learned this from Silicon Valley, is the doors don't go up.
The
That's
boat
true.
doors.
They do just go out.
Yeah.
Well, you buy this and then you get like a 750S.
Yeah.
There you go. Done.
Consumer buying advice.
There you go.
That's what I come here for.
Yeah.
If you're a billionaire and you're listening to this podcast, I have a lot of questions for you, but also, what are you doing? Stop being stupid. I want you to have, I don't know. Every state should have, let's say, 5 animal shelters, just like cool shelters, like with like just dogs and cats and raccoons and whatever running around having the best time of their lives. Stop doing stupid things. Come on.
And then all of the cars
together.
and then all the support cars for those animal shelter sanctuaries could be Lamborghini Sterratos.
Exactly.
There
You put a little kitty cat, drive it around.
Did you drive anything this week, Chad?
No, the most recent thing that I've been in was actually the BMW, the i5 M60, which I don't know if you guys have talked about, but I think it's ugly, but I adore it. It is
It's
so
great.
good. It's so good at being a BMW sedan.
Oh, it's the best. The
Like-
5 series. The eyes are the best. Whatever series they're in.
It's so hard to articulate, I think, to somebody who's never done it. But if you've never driven like a mid-size, like a 5 Series sedan at like highway speeds, like it's such a different experience. And you're like, oh, that Autobahn thing kind of makes sense because like this car just, I mean, it has a decent number of horsepower. It's like 600 something, I think, with the M60, but it's like a cruise missile. It's so cool. It's so very good at eating highway miles. Charges reasonably well. I just think the i5 is a little ugly. I don't.
I drove it up and down.
Yeah.
I drove it to LA and back. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I like the looks of the i5 better than the i4. Although, if I was buying one, I would probably just close my eyes and buy the i4. I like the little bit smaller size of the i4.
Same.
Yeah,
but,
I like the i4
but
better.
you're absolutely right. I mean, the i5 is fantastic to drive.
And it's got this really cool thing. Mine had the augmented reality instrument cluster display.
Mm-hmm.
So like when it's paired with the level 2 ADAS, it puts little green squares over top of cars and traffic. And I felt like I was Maverick in Top Gun. They're trying to lock on and get its own.
Yeah.
It's so, I don't know. Yep. But yeah, it was really efficient too. Like I was really surprised. Like and Sam, I think you can probably explain to me why this is the case, but I've always been told that like, oh, dedicated EV platforms are naturally going to be more efficient. BMW seems to have countered that narrative at least a little bit.
I once said to to Oliver Zipse, the CEO of BMW, it's like, why aren't you doing that? Why are you doing these flexible platforms? And I've acknowledged that I was wrong because I mean they've done a fantastic. It's amazing what they've done with their current 5th generation electric drive system is so efficient. The motors and everything are so efficient that yes, from a packaging standpoint, they're not ideal. I mean, for a car with a hood that long, it should have a front trunk. and you still have the transmission tunnel in there, but forget it. It doesn't matter. The rest of it
Yeah.
is so good.
It's and they're doing this with motors without rare earth battery
Yeah.
not batteries, magnets, which everyone was like, no, you can't do that. It's not going to be efficient. There's not going to be performance. And they made it efficient and performance. They're like, yeah, we can do it.
Yeah.
I think I've said
Can't
it
wait
being.
to see the Neue class stuff.
I don't think BMW gets enough props for its engineering with those vehicles, just because they're just sort of invisible on the road unless you sort of know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't realize that people are driving around in a lot.
Well, and I think it peaks at 205 kilowatts, and I was able to hit that easily, and charging wise, and I haven't broken down the data yet because a lot of things has happened since I drove that car, but it charges reasonably well too. Like, it's just good.
Yeah.
It's just really good. Yeah. No, I think I got like 212 in it, like when I was charging it when I went on my trip down to LA and back. So
yeah, a friend of mine, when his lease
Fine.
was up on his Mach-E earlier this year, he turned that in and got an i5, and he loves it, and he thinks it's fantastic. So,
Yeah.
all right, let's move on to some of the stories of the week. Let's start with the Mazda EZ6.
Easy like Sunday morning.
Why can't we have this car?
It's called China.
It's Chinatown.
Yeah.
Chinatown.
So right now, this is a China only model. It's it is basically a new generation Mazda 6, but it's electric, and it's got this is what we should have got instead of the MX-30.
Yes.
Yeah, that MS, man, there's
Terrible. Worst car I've driven.
It drove fine, but
it didn't drive like
but it doesn't.
Yeah,
it didn't drive like a Mazda.
It didn't drive like a Mazda. It was the promise of a Mazda should be, oh yeah,
and
it was not that. And then you're just like, oh, because like Anyway, we should have gotten this. This is a really pretty sedan.
Yeah,
I'm sure you guys have talked tariffs to death, but sometimes the Chinese get some pretty cool stuff.
They get some cool stuff, and it's cheaper to build the cars, and they don't have as much. Homologation it's completely different, and so it's less expensive for automaker. Blah blah. There's a billion reasons why you won't get this car for under $23,000 in the United States, even if they decide to build it. There's just no way that's going to happen.
Yeah,
but $35,000 version of this car would be. People would be
pretty
like,
stellar, yeah.
If it could get this car for $35,000, even $40,000, I would probably buy it.
Yeah, no,
it looks fantastic.
Yeah,
it looks amazing,
and it still drives like a Mazda. Oh,
yeah.
This is your i4. This is the one that goes up against the i4. Really?
Well, it says this has a range extender, so.
Well, you can get one. There's also one with that range extender.
Oh, is there? So there's a normal one as well.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So you can get it. I don't know what it has in it. What's it? What motor?
258 horsepower motor on the rear wheels, 0 to 60 in 6.2, and
121 miles or 124 miles on CLTC, which is what, like 60 EPA?
Probably about 75.
75 EPA. Yeah.
So 56 kilowatt hour or 69 kilowatt hour batteries. The larger battery gives you 373 miles, so it's going to be probably about 275 or so, 260, 275. So
little EV.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and it's got Mazda styling, Mazda design language. So hopefully we'll see them bring something like this to market here in the coming years.
I'm assuming at the price point it's like 400-volt architecture.
Yeah, almost certainly.
Surely. Yeah.
They don't have the.
And it's probably LFP battery, but that's fine. Nothing wrong.
Whatever.
Yeah. All right. Now charging. We've mentioned charging a couple times. Let's start with Enel X Way.
Okay. Let's do that.
I've talked to a bunch of people. I got an article I'm writing up, but I'll tell you all here because I'll give you the link tomorrow. It's going to go up tomorrow.
Okay. Did you actually talk to somebody at Enel X?
No, because there's no one there. They've all been laid off. They're all gone.
But did you, Chad?
I've talked to former employees at Enel X.
I was going to say, I know somebody I can reach out to, but I just haven't.
I reached out to a bunch of, I guess at this point, former employees of Enel X, and I'm sure they have not replied, but I'm sure there was probably some sort of, hey, we'll give you X amount of money. Here's an NDA, and you're just like, well, I don't have a job now, so I guess I'll sign this, get the money, do the NDA, and not talk to a random reporter and potentially lose my money because it doesn't help me at all. Which I completely understand why people do that. NDAs are dumb, but what are you gonna do?
We've had a bunch of through my business partner's business, we've installed several commercial Enel X chargers, juice boxes. So like I'm very intimately familiar with what they do and what they no longer do.
So for people of enterprise, there are a couple companies. There's Chargelab and there's Noodoe. Noodoe. Anyway, there's two companies that you can reach out to. Chargelab told me that if you want to talk to them, they'll have to send someone out, not from Chargelab. They have like partners and stuff. They have to come out and make some adjustments to the stations, the setup, whatever, and it'll work. But you have to do it before October 11th. October 11th, the servers go down. They just turn there's a big switch. When they're turning off all the power on
the Death Star. Yep.
That's what they're going to do over at the thing. The problem is that like Chargelab doesn't. They're trying to get a hold of the people who are in charge of the company now, which is liquidators. Liquidators don't give any. They don't care. No. They don't care about like keeping servers up. They don't care about whatever.
We kind of jump to the actual point here, which is Enel X, the current makers of Juice Box, are abandoned in North America.
They're gone. They've left.
Peace out. Yeet it out.
And they did it in a way where they had, they were working with other companies in order to do a transition, and then they just decided, nah, never mind. We're just gonna leave early. So if they had waited until like mid-November, there would be systems for people to very in a leisurely way transition from the Enel X back in to these other companies.
Yeah.
But because they didn't do that, now everyone's scrambling and losing their minds trying to make this work.
Well, in Box, I mean, like when they were owned before they were bought by Enel, like they're the OG EVSE stuff. Like they've been around since dinosaurs literally roamed the earth. Like it was one of the go-to brands when people were like, hey, what hardware should I buy? When we independently tested stuff when EV Pulse was still mostly a going concern, we still really liked their stuff. We recommended it, and they're just like, nope. I guess the only positive to this is thankfully they adopted OCPP.
They mostly adopted. It's OCCP-ish. It's not they're part of the Charging Alliance, but they were never. It's not. If it was pure OCPP, it'd be a lot easier for everyone to just sort of take over. So right now there's a lot of like sort of like figuring out, making it work. For the people who have chargers at home, here's the deal. If you are a company and you see just a bunch of abandoned chargers that people have already paid for, you're not going to get any money for, there's no business case for any company to take over those home residential chargers. But, and here's the big but, this is sort of the saving grace that might mean that there will be something in the future software-wise for these home chargers, is that this company works with a ton of utilities, and they have the sort of peak where they can turn them on and off, and they can make adjustments. And so there are a lot of contracts out there with not public utilities. This is America. What am I thinking? There are a lot of contracts out there with utility companies where if someone can come in and take over those contracts, there is an actual business case for having software, or at least some semblance of software. Maybe it's an app, maybe it's a web something, to continue to make those work with an app, so you can still schedule them. Because what's going to happen is when on October 11th, scheduling is going to go away, because the way they do their scheduling is it pings the back end. So because my concern was like, well, will it still schedule? Nope. So if you have one of those, scheduling goes away. And it might not happen on October 11th, it might happen a few days later, but it's going to stop working because it has to continually ping the back end in order to say, oh, what time is it? Oh, when do I schedule? Okay, what time is it? Oh, when do I schedule? Because it's always looking for you to say, oh, I've changed my scheduling. Or it's looking on the back end to say, oh, the utilities tell me to change the schedule. Utilities tell me to turn off. The utilities tell me. And so because it's going to hit nothing, the the machine's just going to be like, well, now I'm essentially just a dumb
Yeah, they become dumb chargers.
chargers. You
So
can schedule in your car, which is great if you have like one EV, and so it still sort of works. But if like something goes sideways, there's no customer service, there's nothing. So the fingers crossed that because of these utility contracts, that there is going to be something that allow these servers or these to allow customers to keep using these residential units at least close to what they were doing before, at least being able to like schedule them and tell them to turn off and on and adjust the amperage, because you can adjust the amperage on some of them.
From a pragmatic standpoint, I'm not gonna disagree with Robbie at all, but
You can.
I will say that, like,
this is from information from people I've talked to who are working on making this happen.
Dumb chargers aren't necessarily the worst thing in the world. And while, yes, there's no longer going to be a company around to warranty things or things like that, there's not really a whole lot to an EVSE that could go wrong as long as it was wired properly. For the most part.
Yeah.
Being able to yes, if you have an agreement with your utility, yes, that's a problem, 100%. If you were just using the scheduled charging function and you have one EV, just schedule it in your EV. Now that's a problem for us, the three people on this panel.
Yeah, for us because we have a lot of EVs.
Because we're in a lot of EVs, so it's way easier. It's way easier to schedule it on the charger on the EVSE than it is to set it up in the car, because X, Y, and Z. A lot of cars now, though, are getting smart enough to know where they are. So you can set up a schedule at home. You can schedule at work. If you know that your work charger isn't particularly fire code friendly, like, you can turn the amperage down on how much it'll take. It'll remember all of these things. Tesla's been doing it for a long time. I want to say that BMW that I was just in allowed for some flexibility that way. So the cars are getting
smart enough.
Pretty smart. But yeah, the utility stuff, like talking back and forth to a utility, yeah, the EVSE has to be able to do that at this point. And as a dumb charger, that won't work. So hopefully there's a solution there for those folks, and also some people who may not know they might be affected, like the commercial chargers. Yeah, it can show you whether the station's up, it can show you how much electricity is being used, things like that. But it's also access control. So if you are run some apartments, and let's say you've got 2 juice boxes out front, and you got to go use an RFID tag to authorize it so you can charge, like, none of that's going to work. When they switch over to dumb chargers, they're just going to work, regardless of whatever access policy you had set up on it. So that may bother some business owners.
Yeah, it's all very fluid. The people I was talking to, they were just like, well, this is what we know now, is that we can, companies have, it's sort of a land grab, to be honest, for the enterprise stuff. So there's a couple companies that are saying that they can take over that. So that's great for the enterprise people, but for the at-home residential people,
yeah,
right now it looks like there's a pretty good possibility that those will come back online at some point. But it's not 100%, and it's still sort of, again, it's if this were, say, a company that didn't have deals with utilities, those would they would never come back online, because there's zero business case to just take over the back end of residential chargers that have already been sold, unless you decide, you say, oh, we'll do it, but you're going to have to pay like a subscription of something dollars a month.
From a home user standpoint, I'm not sure what the best advice here is to give, because I would really love to say, well, look, if you buy EVSE hardware in the future, make sure that it's OCPP or whatever compliant. Man, trying to explain that to my mom isn't going to work. So yeah. I do know that, like, when I review EVSE hardware in the future, that is going to be something that I'm going to look at. Is it capable of? Because a lot of these companies, like, I thought Enel X, Enel's the 52nd largest company in the world and the second largest utility provider.
Yeah, they're major utility in Europe.
Yeah,
they have an F1. They sponsor F1. They
could
have very easily, with their money, kept this company going for a couple more months for this transition, and they didn't.
So if I'm gonna recommend hardware, I'm gonna have to recommend hardware that has a failsafe in case something goes wrong like this. Because with public chargers, yeah, you get that's EA's problem to solve, or Ionna's problem to solve, or Tesla's problem to solve. Like, I don't recommend people go buy. I don't recommend site owners going and buying their own hardware, because, like, in Southeast Michigan, there's a lot of Enel X DC fast chargers. I'm trying to think which county just got a bunch of them installed. Like, there's DC fast chargers near Sam that might not work after the 11th, because there's going to be no payment processing or anything on them unless somebody comes in and solves that. So as a business owner, I would be pissed. But for home users, like, there isn't this option to have somebody else bring the stuff in.
Yeah.
Unless I know, Robbie, you talked about it a little bit. I think it was you talking about it. Maybe it was Gitlin. Like, there are some companies out there that are, like, offering home solutions. Like, here's X amount of money per month, and you get your parking spot. This is like for multi-use dwellings. Like, you get your parking spot, and you get charging hardware, and you kind of get everything that's all managed by somebody else.
Yeah, that's what companies like Noodoe do.
Yeah.
They do that, with businesses and multi-unit dwellings, apartments and condos and things like that. And what was the other company you mentioned, Robbie?
Chargelab. So I talked to Noodoe and Chargelab, and Noodoe from Noodoe was like, we think there's a pretty good chance they can get the residential, individual chargers up and running. And again, it's only because there is a business case because of all the contracts with the utilities.
Yeah.
At this point, you're just like, well, what happens in the future? Do you ChargePoint seems to be around. They seem to be doing some smart things, but at the same time, you're like, well, should I just buy chargers from established automakers? Like, Ford's not going anywhere.
But that's all just rebranded stuff, though. Like, it's like, there's, I forget which automaker.
You can be angry at Ford still, though. You can say, hey, like, with this,
I'm always
yeah.
That's my secret cap. I'm always angry at Ford.
But you can't be mad at a company that just doesn't exist anymore. Everyone can yell at Ford until they do something. No one can yell. We can all yell at but in North America, the company doesn't exist. It's liquidators. It's nothing, and they're all off in Europe doing, I don't know, eating tapas. I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a horrible situation, especially when I have one plugged into my house right now.
A juice box?
And yeah, I have a juice box, and I have a ChargePoint charger in my garage. And I'm just going to take it out of the box and swap it out. Easy peasy.
Yeah, there's a commercial.
But again, that's just me. That's like, I'm an insane use case that I don't, not people don't have level 2 chargers just lying around the garage.
Right. I mean, yeah, my business partner, like, I've got a space at the office that has chargers stacked up there. But also, like, there's an Enel X charger attached to the outside of that building too. So, but again, like, what do you recommend to home users? Like, you want the connectivity stuff, but, like, can you even trust ChargePoint? I mean, I don't want to get sued, but, like, they're still going through funding rounds. Like, they're not exactly, rolling in the dough. So, like, who do you buy from?
That's where I start thinking, I'm like, well, I guess you just get from OEMs, because you have somebody to yell at. It's literally down to somebody to yell at.
Or you just give up on the connected stuff and just
buy a
dumb charger. And for residential use, that's fine. And you can figure out how to program your car. For
even
commercial
cars,
for commercial customers, it does get much more complicated, and you do want some sort of managed charging for commercial customers.
Yeah. Well, as we talk about, though, like, vehicle to grid and vehicle to home and stuff like that, you need smarter chargers.
Yeah.
So I don't. Yeah, I hate to see it, because it really throws a wrench into a very important problem. Because even if you're giving free chargers away, like what Ford announced they're going to be doing, segue, it's still like they're just rebranded like Webasto or something. So, like, you can yell at Ford, but are they just going to shrug their shoulders and be like, too bad, so sad?
I don't know. It feels like it's the Internet of Things problem. I used to cover the Internet of Things, and after covering, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. All this stuff is dumb, because so many things are connected that don't need to be connected, and then those companies just disappear. And when those companies disappear, now you have a light bulb that won't turn on. Now you have a toaster that doesn't work. Now you have, your stupid, weird juicer doesn't work anymore. You're like the one you could just squeezed it anyway. So
Buying, but
the
this is
idea of like having everything in your life connected to your app to me is just like, after covering it, I was like, nope. And then I
but this
covered InfoSec, and that just like, oh god, none of this needs to be
but
connected.
this is a much bigger problem though, if you
Did it
ask me, because you
because
can
it's
opt out of
$500.
well, yeah, but you can opt out of Internet of Crap stuff too.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to buy an Alexa, but you need a home charger if you have an
Yeah.
EV.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
over the last several years, we've bought several new appliances in this house, all of which are connected or have connectivity. None of, we've got a Samsung refrigerator. Well, that one doesn't have connectivity, but we've got an LG stove, and Maytag washer and dryer. I mean, it's hard to find anything now that doesn't have connectivity, but I don't have any of them connected.
Yeah.
None of them are
If
hooked up to my
if it
Wi-Fi.
won't work without it being connected to the app, don't
Oh,
buy it.
yeah, absolutely.
That's my sort of advice. And I think I talked to someone who works with open source stuff, and he's like, if the charging station had just had like a web server on there, like your router,
Mhm.
your router is essentially
Yeah.
like a little web server. There at least, and if it's open source and has a web server, then there's a lot of things you can do with something that, if the company sort of just dissolves, there's going to be like the Linksys WRT
Yeah,
router.
the
Like you have,
DDWRT.
yeah, you have a whole community that'll keep that thing going. I mean, this company has like what 100. I think they were saying like 100,000 individual like uh, uh, charging stations out in the wild. And if it had a web server and it had been true open source, then people could have like, okay, we got this, we can figure this out, we can make this work, and but
Yeah.
it
I mean,
didn't.
you
And
you
so
go
it's
buy a
terrifying.
$30 router at Best Buy. It's got a web server built into it.
Yeah.
So
But I think it's one of the things where you have to sort of like, okay, so now rethinking how these things are done. And it's horrible for all these people who actually needs, on charger scheduling. But like Chad was saying, if you just needed to you have your one EV, you can just schedule your EV, and like you said, there's all, a lot of them have location settings, and so just, do that, and you just have a dumb charger in front of your house, which, you can't. I mean, I had the app, and I would rarely open it, to be honest. And the app's gotten worse apparently since the takeover over the last few years, according to people who actually use the app. I open it it just tells me when things are charging and when it stops. It gives me a notification. I'm like, all right, well, it's working. And that was essentially the only reason I used the app for. I rarely would open it and look at it because, I mean,
yeah,
I just need it to
I've
charge.
got excuse me, I've got an Autel charger that I use, and the only thing I use the app for is to program. Here's the times when I have peak electricity rates. And so do the charging, before 3 p.m. and after 7 p.m.
After 7, we gotta wait till like 9, but really midnight.
Here our time of use rates are from 3 to 7 p.m. So
Yeah. So
anyway,
yeah, sorry everybody. I wish I had better news. I think there might, but there it's not totally the end of the world. And again, if you're an enterprise user, like, reach out to one of these companies
yeah, I'll
or
have
multiple
links to
companies and figure it out.
Noodoe and Chargelab in the
Yeah.
show notes, and you can, if you're looking for a specific contact, if you've got a business or a fleet with Enel X Way, just reach out to us by email. Use the feedback link on the site, or feedback at wheelbearings.media, and we can try and connect you with individuals at these companies that might be able to help you out.
Chad, you have the enterprise setup, right? Like, what is the decision? Have you made the decision? Or are you still like, oh no, what do we do?
So the ones that we have installed with like local government,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't have access control on those.
Okay.
The county commissioners decided that it was worth the $15 a month they pay in electricity, basically, to leave those open.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see any issue there, other than commissioners being upset that they can't see how much electricity it's using.
Yeah.
Because they weren't separately metered, but they were just using the enterprise software to see how much electricity was being used.
Yeah.
There's one hotel that they didn't install on. That I'm not sure if my business partner's on vacation right now. I don't know if he's reached out to, but I think they were doing access control a little bit different of a way. But that's what the enterprise software really was like when we were using it. Was like for access control. It wasn't really for payment processing or anything like that. So very low lift. Not the end of the world if they switch over to dumb equipment type of situations. Other than you just can't tell, if they're online or anything. You don't have a database, so
you gotta go out and check them.
Yeah, so you have to go out and actually check them.
Yeah.
To make sure that they work. But yeah, the people that have DC fast chargers, I don't know. They're
I have to look at my notes. I kind of forgot about it. Someone told me something about the DC fast charger. It's in my notes, but that's such a there's such a small number compared to everything else, and I felt like compared to like just the person at their house who spent money.
I mean, I'm more concerned though that like all the people that I've recommended Emporia hardware to, because they do that home like load balancing with the house type of stuff. They do really clever stuff. Like that's super affordable. Like I really like their hardware. I like their CEO. I like talking about their products. But man, it requires a lot of connectivity to work.
Yeah.
And I, as far as like they're still technically a startup too. And I'm like, man, am I recommending a bad thing to a bunch of people because they could go bankrupt, and this would be even a bigger problem because this also has stuff installed in their panels at home.
Yeah.
Like, but it's amazing because if you can't afford if you can't do a panel upgrade, this helps you get around that, and it adheres to building code and all of that. So, like, I'm really nervous now to even talk about EVSE at all, thanks to this. So, thanks, Enel.
Thanks for making our jobs a little bit weirder, because we at the end of the day, we all of us just want to give you the best advice for what to do when you're getting these. And for a while, we were all like, "Yeah, these are great." There's one in my house.
Yeah,
I was like, "Oh, this is a cool little charger. It works great. It does a thing." Yeah, there you go. You can lock it if you want. I never locked it in case I get.
Oh yeah, you could lock.
While I'm out of town, my neighbors want to steal some electricity. I was like, I never locked it.
Yeah, you could lock it. It's very smart. I mean, for what's basically a fairly simple device, it's pretty intelligent and well thought through and weather resistant. I mean, it handled the winters here, no problem. The only issue we had once was the county, when they plowed the parking lot at one of these installs, piled snow up onto the charger, which didn't affect the charger at all, but the cable froze. And when they tried to untangle the cable, like something broke. So they ended up just cutting the cable. The guys basically the plow guys, not anybody else. So, we had to replace the equipment because the cable got cut. Yeah. That was not the charger's fault or the weather's fault. That was some engineer not knowing what they were doing.
Anyway,
well, let's move on to some slightly more positive charging news.
Good time.
So Ford, and we didn't get around to talking about this last week, but Ford announced their Power Promise so they're going to be providing when you buy a Lightning or a Mach-E, and I don't know if this it also e-Transit, you'll get a complimentary home charger and installation, and technically, Ford says, there's no price cap on the installation, but they do say, a standard installation. So, if you need a power panel upgrade, so if you've got an older house with 100 amp service or even less in some cases, you'll almost certainly need to get a panel upgrade and have some rewiring done. Or, if your panel's on the opposite side of the house from where your vehicle is going to be plugged in and got a long run, they probably won't cover that, but they'll give you a free Ford Charge Station Pro, and basic installation for that.
And they said they'll quote unquote split the cost with you on non-standard kind of installs.
So there's a price cap, they just haven't told us.
Yeah,
there is. Well, so this is their 80 amp charger.
Yeah, is it the 80 or the 40, the 60?
I had seen somewhere it's the 80.
Okay,
it's the full Pro one.
Okay,
wow.
So that's
it is.
I mean, I hate to say this is news because this isn't really news because other automakers have given away chargers and install. But it is nice to see And an 80 amp charger is great. Other than, Sam, to your point,
You need
an
at least
80
a
amp,
200 amp panel or
you're
more,
going to need a 200 if you're going to use the full 80
because
amps.
you need
Yeah.
you need a 100 amp circuit just for this charger if you're gonna use it at 19 kilowatts. You can run it at lower, so you could you could run it at 9.6 kilowatts, off of a 50 amp circuit, or if you've got a 60 or 60 amp, I think you can do 11
to
kilowatts.
50.
Yeah.
Yeah, 11 kilowatts, 10 and a half,
Yeah.
11, yeah.
But yeah, and the Charge Station Pro that's their bi-directional charger. So in theory, you could at some point in the future, if you wanted to, you could add in the home integration kit that lets you do the home backup power from your EV with this thing. So this is a pretty solid charger. I don't know who actually manufactures it for them, but
I don't know if it's Webasto. I heard somebody say it might be Webasto, but don't quote me.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that one.
I think I've heard that. I think I've also heard it's Webasto that provides these.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, the cost. I mean, they're probably partnering with like Qmerit or somebody. Everybody partners with Qmerit. But they're eating some cost here because that charging hardware. I mean, at their cost is probably only a couple $100, but
I mean, their normal price for that charger is $1,300 just for the charger.
So, and an install can be $1,500 to $3,000. I mean, I don't know what their price cap is on this, but it could be a pretty solid deal.
Even they cap it at like $1,000. Like that's $1,000 less.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
charger, plus $1,000 credit to do like a thing you need to do to your house, and so that's a nice little.
When I had the NEMA 1450 outlet put in my garage for the charger, I had a fairly simple install because the panel's right on the inside of the wall that separates the house from the garage. It was like $700.
Yeah, mine was $750 to put my NEMA 1450 on the next to the panel on the outside.
Yeah,
we charge because we have my garage is full of wood stuff.
I think this is a limited time. Are they only saying it's a few months? Like it doesn't sound like it's
let's see,
for everything.
Through January 2nd, 2025.
Okay,
so from October 1st to January 2nd.
So that's kind of lame, Ford. But I mean, like I said, part of me thinks this isn't news at all, but it is a pretty solid piece of charging hardware. Which the other deals that like Hyundai and Kia were doing for a while that were not this beefy, though they didn't have cars that could support that. And the Lightning will do 19.2 kilowatts. So
I suspect that after January, they'll come up with something else, perhaps with one of the cheaper chargers.
Speaking of Ford, I mean, I know this isn't exactly on the rundown, but I do want your opinion, especially you, Sam. With the tariff on LFP now, what it is, we saw that Tesla dropped the standard range Model 3 rear drive. Decided it was too expensive to continue to offer it. Do you think Ford's going to do that with Mach-E? Are they doing that LFP in the base Mach-E?
They have an LFP battery now in the standard range Mach-E. They had previously announced that they were also going to do that in the Lightning. My guess is that if they haven't already, they will probably go back to the NMC battery for those standard range models. I don't think they ever launched the LFP Lightning, but they have been building the LFP Mach-E's. And when they did their announcement of canceling the 3-row utility and shuffling some product plans around, one of the things they talked about was transit. Right up until now, they have the Mach-E and the E-Transit have gotten their battery modules from LG from their plant in Poland. One of the things they announced was that they were going to transition to getting those supplied from LG's factory in Holland, Michigan, in West Michigan, because that plant has been undergoing an expansion to add more capacity there. So my guess would be that they will drop the CATL LFP battery from the Mach-E, replace it back with an LG NMC battery sourced from Michigan, which will offset some of the cost advantage that they were getting from the having it built in Michigan. Will offset some of the cost advantages and also get it back to being eligible for tax credits.
Well, tax credit, yeah.
So that's probably what will happen, at least temporarily, until the new LFP factory in Marshall, Michigan is up and running which should be early part of 2026. And then they'll go back to using LFP for the base models.
Okay. Awesome. No, I think that was just this week that this happened. So
yeah, because the tariffs just went into effect at the beginning, or like right at the end of September. I think 27th of September, the tariffs went into effect. So yeah, as you said, Tesla discontinued availability of the standard range Model 3, which was also using the same type of CATL battery modules that Ford was using. And so right now, the cheapest Model 3 you can get is back to being the long range with the Panasonic batteries built in Nevada.
Yeah, but they do now offer that in a rear drive only.
Yeah.
So it's almost like they were getting prepared for that, and that does 363 EPA. So if you can get past all of Elon's politics, it's still not a bad deal. But it's, Ford being able to make that switch, I think, will be competitive for them, especially with being able to offer the tax incentive. And who boy, when that LFP battery plant's online, I think they could get really competitive.
Yeah,
so,
no, absolutely. Yeah. The one other thing that we didn't mention from the Ford Power Promise announcement is that they're now also offering proactive roadside assistance. So if you get stranded, they will send out roadside assistance to pick you up, bring you to the closest charging station or dealership in the case of adverse vehicle events, including running out of charge. That's pretty adverse, no matter where you are. So
I've done that recently.
ran out of charge before you got to the charger?
Sure did. I mean, not really on purpose, but like I expected it. I was doing a range test on the Fiat 500e,
Okay.
and they only quote they wouldn't say whether they quote gross or net battery size. So I assumed that what they quoted was net. It wasn't. It was gross.
Oh.
Dun, dun, dun.
So I did some math in my head, and I'm like, oh, I've got the range, and 2 miles away from the chart, like I could see the Flying J sign.
Yeah.
Car just gives up the ghost, and I was on the Ohio Turnpike, and state police pull up not too long after I stop, and she's like, you can use whatever towing company you want, but like this is the one we work with all the time. They're pretty good and they're pretty quick. And she's like, so you're not sitting here forever? And I'm like, okay, thanks. I mean, I had AAA, so, but unfortunately, at least on the state highway road, I'm sorry, on the Turnpike, their roadside assistance, their free ones, like their State Farm road patrols, none of them have the ability to charge. So they have to tow.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate, because I really like the idea of, a Lightning driving around, plugging into a car for 10 minutes. And,
at least give you enough of a charge to get to the nearest charging. But if you're ever trying to get to the EA station down the road here, and you get there and it's not working, just ping me. You can always use my charger.
I will, for sure. But yeah, it's not fun having to call a tow truck.
No.
Though I thought about, like, I shared it with some friends. I think Robbie was in this group message or whatever, and somebody's like, "Oh no, people are going to see your EV alongside the road and think that they're bad." And somebody's like, "Oh, we'll just pop the hood and then they'll think it's a gas car. It's a gas feed that's broken
probably
down.
Will."
So, but I digress. Right. Sorry, it's just interesting experience. That's all.
All right. Earlier, Chad, you mentioned Ionna. And they just announced this week that they have broken ground on their first charging site. So for those that don't remember, Ionna is the joint venture of now 8 automakers. Toyota earlier this summer joined in as well and invested in there, and they are planning to build out a network of 30,000 DC fast chargers by the end of the decade, if not sooner. It includes BMW, General Motors, Honda, Hyundai, Mercedes-Benz, Kia, Stellantis, and Toyota. And their first site is just down the road from their head office in Apex, North Carolina. So it's going to have a
great town name.
Yeah. Going to have coffee shop there and covered charging location, covered charging ports, all kinds of other good stuff. Both 400 and 800 or 400 kilowatt charging capacity, and 10 chargers at this particular site, and both CCS and NACS connectors on the chargers. So
I've got
Absolutely necessary. I think that anybody who's ever charged at like a Bucky's or at a Sheetz or something like that experience is just better. I know charging needs to be in other places other than just higher end gas stations and stuff like that. But being able to, you're gonna sit for 20 minutes, like give me something to do.
Yeah.
yeah. I wish they had 8, 10. They should have made it 15.
I think that I love this rendering photo that they get because they included one vehicle from every manufacturer in the alliance. So like there's this SRT Banshee sitting right out
Yeah.
front, and like
There's a Hummer in the background.
Yeah, Hummer in the background,
and an i5, and a Mercedes
All
EQE, and a looks like a Lexus RZ, and a Prologue.
Yeah, and then the Koreans are all kind of back in the corner, actually charging.
Yeah.
But no, people are just like, there's all sorts of reasons why charging stations need to improve. And part of it is, convenience, part of it's protection from the weather, part of it's for something to do while you're charging, part of it is for flipping safety.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that I would be, if I were a woman and I went to that charging station near you, that EA one, Sam, at night or even during the day, but especially at night, I'm nervous when I go now.
Yeah. Well, at least that one's not like tucked way in the back of the lot
corner with like one flickering light like 30 feet away.
Yeah, when Nicole and Eileen tried to do that Disney to Disney run a couple of years ago, they had a couple of spots where it was, there was one, I think, that was in the back corner of a lot behind a Denny's where they stopped, after dark, which was not a real pleasant experience.
Yeah, and I've noticed like Tesla chargers tend to be, I mean, they're still not great, but they tend to be in nicer parts of the parking lot. Like there's one very particular one, I think it's in, not in Elkhart, Indiana, but Mishawaka. And like there's an EA station at the Mishawaka Mall, and there's a Tesla supercharger. The Tesla supercharger is right in front of the theater, lots of lights, people walking by, like foot traffic.
Yeah.
And the EA one's on the other side, past the abandoned JCPenney. Just like it's in the bad. It's just in the dark, seedy
corner.
Yeah. And I've talked to enough women now that are legit concerned, like, oh, I like the idea of an EV, but X, Y, and Z, and safety is one of those concerns. And there's a company out there now, they only make stuff right now for Tesla, but they've got a CCS charger in the work, designed to so you can drive away while you're DC fast charging. So if you're I'll say,
it's a quick disconnect thing.
Yeah,
it's kind of like the Apple MagSafe.
Yeah, it's not designed to be reused or things like that. It's not quite a MagSafe, but it functions virtually the same way. And they've had clients call or send emails and stuff and say, look, like I was getting harassed at a charging station by a dude, or these people wouldn't leave me alone. I felt unsafe, and we were able to drive away. And those are things I don't, honestly, as a, again, middle-aged white guy, those are things I don't have to worry about, but as much. But yeah, the more women I talk to about EVs, the more that like safety is very high on their list, as it should be.
No, absolutely.
Not at all trying to diminish that.
Yeah.
And stations like this and places like this.
Well, and also, another issue is just accessibility. If you are, if you are in a wheelchair or something, or even just, if you have like arthritis, if you've got strength issues in your hands, manipulating some of those big thick cords and and CCS connectors. And this is one of the good things about the switch to NACS is that the connectors are so much easier to insert. Using superchargers, the cables are thinner. They're not designed to be as durable, but their plan is to replace them more frequently. As opposed to trying to make them last 10 years. So it's trade-off, but I think it's a good one, to make it more accessible to more people.
Yeah, and there should be better reliability too at these stations because somebody's paying attention to it. in theory, there's an employee
Someone to
that'd be like,
yell at
hey, that charger,
again.
yeah.
There's
Just like
someone
a
to
gas
yell at.
station.
As long as you have someone to yell at, things happen.
Yep.
That's the thing, and that's why it's important. Like those truck stops, like Flying J and all them, are like, oh, you know what? We want people here because they're going to come inside. They're going to buy our regional beef jerky. They're going to eat at whatever
Get some of our
our
sushi.
partner is. Some delicious like gas station sushi. I mean, all the things that you want to get at a gas station, they'll be able to
And if you're gonna dwell for 30 minutes, like take their money, take my money. Like
they're gonna Again, I think I've said it before, but I've met a person on a plane who their job is to upgrade and sell kitchen supplies and like the cooking, the ovens and the stoves and the refrigerator to like Flying J and those sort of companies, and they're upgrading because they know EVs are coming and they want to have more capacity because they know that
you'll have more average consumers that'll be stopping by there rather than just truck drivers.
Yeah, you're gonna have more people who are gonna be like, well, I got 20 minutes. I'm gonna go inside and get like some jalapeno poppers. Which, by the way, more jalapeno poppers. That's all I'm just asking for the world.
Yeah. All right. Couple more Ford items this week. They were busy recently. They cut the pricing on BlueCruise.
Thank God.
And so now the new pricing, they were offering you could get a 3-year subscription for $2,100 or $80 a month $800 for an annual and $75 a month for monthly. So if you only wanted it, say for the summer, if you're doing some road trips and you wanted it just for the summer, you could do it for $75 a month. Now, what you can do is you can do a one-time purchase for the lifetime of the vehicle for $24.95. There's a 1-year option for now $495 instead of $800. The 3-year option has been discontinued, so now it's just the 1 year. But it was 3 years for $2,100. Now it's a year, $495 a year, so it's only $1,500. You still get a 90-day free trial with every vehicle. And then the monthly pricing is only $49.99 instead of $75. So
it's $495. Oh wait, monthly. I'm sorry. Never mind.
Annual is $495, and that also applies for if you've already got an existing vehicle that has the BlueCruise hardware but it's not activated, and then the other pricing is on new vehicle purchases. So the $2,500, if you're buying a new Ford vehicle with BlueCruise capability, you can get it for $2,500 for the life of the vehicle, and that transfers to subsequent owners. So if you get the $2,500 and then after 4 years you sell it to somebody else, they still get to use BlueCruise.
All right, so it's attached to the car, and unlike the Teslas where people were like, yeah, I'm selling it with FSD, but then it didn't have FSD, but then some of them did because the record keeping wasn't great.
Yeah.
And I think for people who like, when you do that long drive for, $50 for a month for that summer month you drive to wherever versus 70, I think $49.95, even though it's only $25, it just seems
it does
a lot cheaper than $25.
Yeah.
Ford's level 2 ADAS is pretty good. Like their standard lane centering. I don't know, man. All 90% of the driving I do is highway, and I still don't know if it's worth $50.
Yeah, I'm not convinced either, but
yeah, I don't ever use them. I
use it on the test vehicles I get, just to try to, and I haven't had a chance to try the latest BlueCruise 1.4 version that they just announced. So we'll see if it should be better, but we'll see once we get a chance to drive that one. But right now I would still, if I wanted a system like this, I would still choose Super Cruise over BlueCruise.
Yeah. And now they've added a whole bunch more roads.
Yeah. And now I still don't really use them. Like I have adaptive cruise control and lane centering on my Ioniq 5. Well, I rarely use it.
if I'm in a busy, if it's
like nonstop like gridlock, then I'm like, fine, I'll turn it on for a little while. But then when I have to like do anything, like, I got to get over and I just turn it all off and then I drive and then I forget to turn it back on. I'm just like,
if it's a busy month, like if it's a busy month for me, Just because Ohio press deliveries are a little weird, so sometimes I can't do the airport swaps and things like that. So if it's a busy month for me, I could be at the airport 4 or 5, 6 times, and that's 100 miles each way. And it's all highway, and I still don't think that I mean, I would use it if I had it, but
I don't use it
it's
just
still
driving. That's the
it's
crazy
still a
thing.
lot of it's still a lot of money when I think that just regular lane centering is so good now that like that's the extra support that I want. I don't necessarily need
Hands free.
to I don't necessarily need hands free. I don't need
What
assisted
are you gonna
lane
do with your
changes.
hands, Chad? What do you do with your hands during hands free?
When you're hands free, you sit on your lap because you can't do anything else. Not that you should, but like you can't do anything else. So why not hold the steering wheel?
Yeah, that's the thing. I end up. I'm like, well, all
You can
right.
play
So I
air
put my hands.
guitar to whatever music.
Yeah, that's true.
Diddly diddly
That's the,
diddly diddly.
but when you get to that part in the air tonight where you got to do the drums, like you just drum the steering wheel
Yeah.
anyway. So
All right. The other big news from Ford was the launch of the 2025 Expedition. So we saw earlier this summer the updated Navigator. Ford calls this an all new Expedition. Not really all new. It's very strong, a very heavy refresh. Yeah,
Allish newish.
yeah, it's the front fascia is all new. The front fascia is all new, and then the interior. But the rest of the sheet metal is pretty much carryover, except for the tailgate. It gets the same split tailgate that the Navigator got, which is a nice feature for a vehicle like this. So it's like split vertically, what, 1/4, 3/4 roughly.
yep.
And one of the neat things that they did on the Expedition that I don't think is available on the Navigator is there's a panel there that you can reposition in multiple ways. So you can put it like a seat back. So if with the lower portion of the tailgate, if you're tailgating, you can sit on there and you have a seat back there, or you can position it as a shelf to have multiple layers in the cargo area. So there's a couple different ways you can use it. That's pretty handy. The other big change is the whole dashboard. They have picked up. It gets half of the display, panoramic display from the Navigator and Nautilus. So you get 48 inches of display in the Lincolns, but it's actually two separate displays, 24 inches each, and there's a little seam in between there that you can see if you look carefully. They just put the left half of that in the Expedition, and then you've got the 12-inch touchscreen, 12 or 13-inch, I think it's 13-inch touchscreen in the middle to actually control everything. It's got Ford's new Android Automotive infotainment system with CarPlay, wireless CarPlay, and Android Auto. One thing there's a couple of things that I think Ford did a lot better than Lincoln. One is in the Navigator, that display is way down low in the
It's
center.
too low.
Yeah.
It's ridiculously low.
And to use it, you've got to be looking well down away from the road to utilize any of that. On the Ford, it's up high on the dash, in kind of the more typical place that you find it on most modern vehicles. And Ford has manual vents. No touchscreen
Bump,
controls of the
bump,
vents.
bump.
So don't
Yay!
buy a Navigator, buy an Expedition.
Yeah,
And
that's
and new for
Yeah.
Expedition,
Yep.
Tremor.
Yeah. So you got an off-roady Tremor version with 33-inch all-terrain tires, some skid plates. They call it best in class ground clearance. Whatever.
whatever that
They're all
means.
pretty close. You know, this is more for trails. This is not a rock crawler. It's the wheelbase is way too long to use it as a rock crawler.
Tiny rocks, baby rocks, gravel.
Yeah.
It's gravel
Exactly.
color.
Gravel rocks. But it looks like some really good updates. It's still the same 3.5 liter EcoBoost, 400 horsepower. You can also get the high output version with 440 horsepower. Lots of towing capacity. So for if you got to haul a bunch of people and a bunch of stuff, this is a good choice.
And they've eschewed the rear seat entertainment.
Yeah.
And I've just decided, just
yeah,
give
that's
me
right. Yeah,
an iPad mouse better.
yeah.
It's
They have a mount on there where you can mount, and you can move it around and mount a phone or mount a big tablet on there in the second row. So that's handy to have, and you can use the hotspot that's in the car as a 5G data connection in there. Of course, you got to pay for that, but you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, but
everything costs money these days.
Oh,
everything.
a couple other interesting details about the interior. So the both the second and third row seats are split 40 20 40. So like the second row, usually, if it's not captain's chairs, they're usually split 60 40. This one is split twice, so you can fold down the center section, and if you've got long stuff like skis and fishing rods and or lumber, you can run it all the way through from the back right up to the back of the front seats, through the second row as well, without having and still have room for two people sitting in the second row.
Because typically, because you have the 60/40, so
Yeah.
now you have to have two people sitting in the 60. One person has to sit right in the smack in the middle.
Yeah.
So you have this really long thing. So one person's just having a bad time.
Exactly. So this is a much nicer solution. And then the other thing, the center console in the front actually slides back and forth. So you can slide it back, and there's a nice big storage bin underneath there. And then, if you want to leave stuff in the car, you can slide that forward. And then when you get out of the car, when you turn off the engine, it locks. And so you have a pretty good sized lockable storage bin up there. So you can, if you're going to the beach, you want to leave a purse or phones
The
or whatever in
balloons,
there. Yeah.
whatever you
can
travel
leave those in there. So it's again, some nice thoughtful touches that they've done in here.
Yeah, a power console. First saw on Tahoe and
Yeah.
Suburban, right? I don't know if that one locks though.
No, I don't think they do. This is the first time I've
Lock-in
seen
part's
one
pretty
quite like this.
Yeah.
If you're like a surfer, like having somewhere in your car that you can lock things in, like your wallet and all your other stuff.
Yeah.
Everything with the
Well,
key you need to get in your car is great.
Well, then, yeah. But can you get the Ford secure
Yes,
code
you can.
on the door?
Yeah.
With this, because that's the ultimate surfer. Not that I surf, but that's the ultimate surfer.
Yeah, you
combo
lock
there.
everything in there, and then leave the key inside and lock it with the keypad.
For me, it was a Cedar Point thing because I could leave everything in the car. It's America's roller coaster, Robbie. America's roller coaster.
Roller coaster. I don't know.
You never been to Cedar Point?
No, I don't know what that even is. Where is Cedar Point?
It's near Sandusky, Ohio.
Yeah, I've never been. I don't even think I've been to Ohio. You're right. Never mind. I'm like, I've been to Honda things.
Yeah, Honda's there.
I've been to Honda things, but yeah, I don't hang out in Ohio. Sorry.
I would really like to see. I know Ford's kind of gone away from it, especially like with the new Explorer and stuff. But I'd really like to see some sort of hybrid option on these big things.
Yeah, that was the one thing that kind of surprised me on the Navigator and Expedition, is that no hybrid option. That is something they really should have, is the power boost system on here.
Seems like a no-brainer,
but I suspect that we'll probably see that come in the next model year or two as an option. All right. Toyota is going to be building a 3-row electric SUV in Georgetown, Kentucky, but they're not going to be building it in late 2025. It's been pushed back about 6 months into the first half of 2026.
Yeah.
But at least for now, they still plan to build it, unlike Ford, which canceled theirs entirely.
Yeah.
I don't care. Where is the tiny FJ Cruiser EV that they showed us like 3 years ago?
Is this like, we're going to build the $25,000 EV Elon Musk thing, like just keep kicking the can until people forget that Toyota's going to do this, or are they actually going to do this?
We'll see. I think they actually will do it.
No, it would be nice, and it would be nice for them to do it, and it really would put them in an advantage over Ford.
Yeah, well, especially since Hyundai's about to launch the Ioniq 9, and they're going to build that in Savannah next year.
Yep.
Kia is already building EV6s in Georgetown, or in West Point, Kentucky. So I think Toyota will go forward with this one.
Yeah, no, and they should, and I hope they do. And them joining Ionna gives me hope that they actually do think EVs for the future.
And that
there's a period because there's a period of time where I thought they weren't. And yes, give me the FJ Cruiser
The little
thingy.
baby FJ
I mean,
Cruiser.
Toyota's still pushing hybrids hard. I mean, they've got, I think now with the 4Runner, I think they now have hybrid powertrains available in every single nameplate in the U.S. And several of them are exclusively hybrid, like the Camry for 25, Prius, of course. But even on the the Rav4, it's up to I think around 30% hybrid take rates in the U.S.
Yeah.
Uh,
And outside of the Tacoma and the Tundra, they've seemed to be pretty reliable. I've heard some stories about the hybrid in Tacoma not being super great. And what I don't get about Tundra is I don't understand how a hybrid can only get 18 miles to the gallon, 17, 18 miles to the gallon.
They tune the system for performance rather than fuel economy to give it extra grunt because they don't have a V8 anymore in there. So
yeah, but no, good for them. Good for them. Let's see it sooner than later.
Our pals at TFL, they have a Cybertruck that they've been doing all kinds of interesting testing with, and they finally got they bought it earlier this year when only the Foundation series was available, which cost an extra $20,000, and none of the stuff was actually available on the truck that you were getting for the $20,000. But now Tesla's finally starting to push out the FSD Supervised to some Cybertruck owners, and the TFL crew got theirs, and Roman and Tommy took it for a drive with FSD, and it mostly did okay, and right up until it didn't.
And that's the problem with these systems is that if it's mostly doing okay, but then it doesn't, is when you run into problems.
Right, because you get used to it doing okay, and then you get
complacent.
You're not paying enough attention, and then all of a sudden, it's not good. you got to grab it.
No. It's like your doctor is like doing surgery on you, and he's doing a pretty good job until they don't do a good job. That's not a thing you want.
That.
Yeah, or an airplane pilot. I'm doing mostly a good job until
I just can't land. I just don't know how to land.
It's like that Ionna crash in San Francisco about a decade ago. Yeah, they got all the way from Seoul, Korea, to like right to the end of the runway at SFO, and then whoops.
What I think is incredibly dangerous is there's a lot of Tesla fanboys out there and girls who will go do this, and then when something goes wrong, they're like, oh no, they just need to solve this or they just need to fix this. Like they're promoting the false sense of security that the system lulls you into. A 99% reliable Tesla full self-driving means thousands of people dying every year. Like we as humans don't comprehend those numbers properly, but like it needs to work into the point, into 3 nines, into 4 nines. Like it has to be better because accidents don't happen a lot of times in this predictableness. It's these weird extremes, fringe examples where people die. And
even when we hear about 40,000 people a year dying on the roads in the United States, you still got to keep in mind that's one person every 100 million miles of driving. And so far, no automated driving system has gotten anywhere close to that. So it's it's an issue. I mean, last week we talked about the ACMI testing or AMCI testing that was done in California. When it had it required a major driver intervention, like an average of every 73 miles, which is nowhere near as good as any of the other automated driving systems out there.
Or just you driving. Like no one needs to like reach over every 73 miles and take over the car for you.
Right.
Yeah. Even if you're a bad driver, you're still pretty good. You're still better than any of the systems on the road.
We have about 6.5 million crashes a year in the United States. Drive about 3.2 trillion miles a year. That's trillion with a T in the United States alone. So that works out to an average of about one crash every 500,000 miles. If you drive 15,000 miles a year, that works out to about one crash every 30 years. Yeah. And none of these automated systems have come anywhere close to that.
Yeah.
No. And it's just, I mean, in the realm of misinformation, gosh, we're in a lot of it right now. Like, there's all sorts of motivations to promote how good full self-driving is, and I think it's good at certain things. Like, it definitely is, but it works until it doesn't. And what happens when it doesn't is what concerns me, and it concerns you guys, but I don't think it concerns enough
Regular
normal
people.
people. Yeah.
All right, let's finish up with Rivian. Unfortunately for Rivian, they cut their fourth quarter production forecast this past week, and so their annual now they had been projecting 57,000 vehicles, R1S and R1T, and vans built this year. They've now cut that to between 47 and 49,000. Apparently, there's a supply issue with some component that's used on both of those vehicle platforms. We don't know what it is, but that's a pretty significant drop from 2023 when they actually did build. They did do 57,000 vehicles last year, a little over 57,000 last year, and I think part of it, is also sales. I think their sales are not as good as they want them to be. That they built 57,000 vehicles last year, delivered 50,000. In Q3, they built, they produced 13,157 in the third quarter, only delivered 10,000. So,
That's 3,000 just sitting.
Yeah.
So that's
If you want a
not great.
Rivian, you can go get one.
Yeah.
Maybe on sale. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I get why automakers have to go to the most expensive stuff first when they're, especially a startup like Rivian. But R2 and R3 can't get here soon enough.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
And R2 is still 2 years away.
Right.
Yeah.
A
lot can happen.
Yeah.
A lot can happen, and a lot of it'll probably come from the Hyundai Motor Group. That's the crazy thing about all this.
Yeah.
Is that everyone is sort of like, the major OEMs are giving them the market, and the startups are, they're battling as hard as they can to stay in business. Meanwhile, Hyundai and Kia are just like, hey, you want 3 road? There you go.
Yeah, Robbie, I talked to our friend Mike at ABC this last week, and he's like, "Who's crushing it right now?" And I said, "It's the Koreans." The thing that he noticed, and I think it's worth sharing to you guys in the audience, is when he talks to affiliates, most general people still have a negative perception of Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis. They think of they're more concerned about break-ins right now.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that. Like this, the Kia Boys stuff is still very fresh in mind with normal people.
Yeah. And the 90s and the Hyundai XL.
Yeah,
people still think about the Hyundai XL. They're still
the accent, which I called the accident for a long time. But they really do have. If you can get past the public perception problem, they're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they are, while Ford has repeatedly, they every quarter when they announce their sales, they say, we're the number 2 EV brand in the United States, which is technically true. As a single brand, they are number 2, but as an automaker, they've now slipped to 4th behind, and Hyundai Motor Group has actually been number 2 for a while, for the last several quarters. So if you add up Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis together, they've been number 2 behind Tesla for a while now. And now with third quarter sales, GM is actually number 3 ahead of Ford because you got Cadillac, Chevrolet.
You get the Lyriq. It's great.
Yeah. Hyundai, I don't know if they're still battling 12-volt battery issues, but I know they had some.
They were. I don't know if they still are. That's something that a bunch of OEMs still have to deal with. On the plus side for Hyundai, though, or for Rivian, I should say, there was obviously, this massive hurricane that swept through the Southeast last week. And there was, I saw multiple reports of a Tesla Model 3 that burst into flames inside a Florida garage after it got flooded by the hurricane. On the other hand, Rivian, because their vehicles are designed to be outdoor adventure vehicles, they're really well sealed up. An owner somewhere in the Carolinas, um, in Asheville, North Carolina, his R1T got swept away in the flood. Ended up about 100 yards down the road. It's all caked in mud. But he opened up the door, got in, fired. It worked right away, no problem at all. And when he opened up the doors, opened up the cargo tunnel, everything was so well sealed. There was no water inside, even though the entire outside of the thing is covered in mud from the flood. It floated down the road, but it was all good.
There you go. That's good. That's build quality.
Yeah.
That's
amazing when you assemble a vehicle properly.
yeah. No.
What can happen? It's weird. I know.
Oh, yeah. You're like, oh
But
well, it's just a little bit. I'm like, no, that little bit means we had a Dodge Neon. I hated. It was the God. I hate. I every time someone's like, oh, Dodge Neons are great. No, they weren't. They were horrible. Ours leaked from the rear window. It just leaked water, like essentially from when they when it was brought home from the dealership. No, it was that. Yeah, yeah. It's just bad quality, build quality. It sort of doomed that car. And then one day the ECU just died while I was driving down the road.
well, that generation of anything from
Yeah,
Chrysler,
wasn't
Daimler Chrysler
wasn't
was terrible. A
suspect.
friend of mine had the Plymouth Neon, and it was the sport version, but they didn't call it the sport; they called it the Espresso with
Oh, I
with an
remember.
X,
Yeah.
with an X. 3-speed automatic, 110 horsepower. It was not express at all,
No.
but no,
I had a Dodge Stratus for a number of years with the 2-liter 4-cylinder, 140-ish horsepower, and a 5-speed manual transmission. And that thing was great. I put over 100,000 miles on that thing. Had no problems at all until started getting a head gasket leaking at about 105,000 miles.
no.
Back pretty good in the 90s.
Back to this Rivian thing though. Like I know that naysayers will say, "Oh, EVs are bad for a lot of reasons," but like this is a great story, and also there's stories coming out of this recent hurricane where people are powering their homes from the 100 kilowatt battery in their garage. The lightning that they have in their garage. Like there's EVs can not be bad in disasters.
Well,
yeah,
Um,
they're not just dumb. My BRZ. If something bad happens, I mean, I guess I can go sit in and turn it on and use the air conditioning. But if something bad happens and I have my Ioniq 5, I have I can just plug it into I can just power things in my house with it.
yeah. Well, and a few days before the hurricane hit, I was at a conference in Austin, and on a panel I was moderating, I had somebody from Hertz, and we've talked about the problems that Hertz had with their EV rollout. But one of the things that Kerry talked about was as they're preparing for the hurricane, they have a whole bunch of Silverado EVs in their fleet, including in Florida and various other locations around the Southeast. And one of the things they were doing was deploying those to locations, to their rental locations, because they knew they were going to have to move a bunch of cars, and people were going to be wanting to rent cars to get out of town. And they were positioning those vehicles at rental locations so they could use them for power, to power the gates to get in and out of the rental locations and various other things. So even despite the problems that Hertz has had with their EV rollout, they have learned some lessons, and they figured, oh yeah, we can use them for this use case. It makes a lot of sense.
Right. And naysayers again. I deal with a lot of naysayers, but naysayers will say, "Oh, how do you charge your car when the power's out?" Well, you're not going to be able to go to a gas station because it uses an electric pump to get the
Yeah,
fuel
I
out
think
of.
people forget about
Uh,
that.
but also, Robbie, that truck that you're in right now, that I mean the SUV version, but that's what 200 kilowatt hours battery pack. If you were using V to L or V to Grid, like the home stuff from GM, that's a month's worth of electricity.
Yeah, it's a
Dude.
lot of electricity.
Like it is
I can have the air
ins-
conditioning blowing the entire time while
Yeah,
with,
yeah.
with
You could have a 30-day rave at your house, with all of your neighbors out of power, and you would still have electricity. So yes,
just turning
obviously,
blenders on. 15 blenders making margaritas for the neighborhood.
yeah, yeah. These things aren't perfect. I get that they're not, but
The
but
benefits.
gee whiz, there are some
Yeah,
benefits
I mean,
if you're set up for that.
we had a power outage after a big storm here a couple of years ago, and Ford sent over a Lightning for me to use, and I plugged in 2 refrigerators, a whole bunch of other stuff, some fans and things like that because it was a very hot, humid day, and with all of that stuff running, it was still only pulling about 2.5 kilowatts. So I could have gone for easily gone for a week on all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things I share with people when they talk about EVs. I'm like, it's not a static thing. You just
Yeah.
sit in your driveway. There's all these potentials with it, and all these things you can do with it, especially in a world, in California where there's a fire. We're always on fire.
Right.
We're always being rained out. We're always, there's always some sort of crazy thing that's happening, and this has the potential to make your life easier during those events. And people just don't understand that. They don't know that. So,
Well, and
Right.
anyway, it'll be a video I'm making, I
Yeah.
guess. And now I
and
have
if
to
you've
make a
got an internal combustion vehicle, and you get 2-3 feet of flood water that submerges your
Yeah.
vehicle, you know what's going to happen when you get in and press the start button or turn the key? Nothing.
That's just terrifying.
When that engine's full of water from that flood, you're not going
Yeah.
anywhere.
And we talk about fires, like there's fires from floodwater and stuff like that. How much is it home wiring and things like that being exposed to salt water?
Yeah.
Is it the EV? Like it is scary. We talked about this when we were in Oklahoma City of all places. Like the byproduct of a lithium fire is oxygen. So yeah, that's
Well, for
scary that a
certain
fire.
types of lithium.
Yeah, for certain
Yeah.
types, the byproduct in combustion is more oxygen. And what does fire need to continue to burn? Oxygen. Like that's real scary. But all of these other things typically go wrong before the car itself catches fire. The whatever boat was that the sunk with all those cars on it, like, oh, it was EVs that did it. It turned out no, it wasn't. Yes, once the EV catches fire, it's bad. Like it's
But
bad.
that wasn't what triggered it.
But that isn't what triggered it. And like let's be realistic about what's triggering these things, and then still figure out how to make the EV safer. And battery chemistry is coming a long way in terms of that. But
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the advantages of LFP batteries. They don't produce
yeah,
O2, which is going to feed the fire. So,
no.
a lot. There's progress being made all the time, and there's
Yeah.
still much higher rate of fires with gasoline vehicles than EVs.
I do want to say though to your listeners, like I'm not normally this grumpy, but like when you cover EVs and electrification almost exclusively for like 4 years, you see every single like what ifs. Everybody likes to throw these what ifs at you, and unfortunately, like I'm okay with explaining to normal users, like, oh hey, yeah, no, that's false, or oh hey, no, that's true in these situations, but like, it has to happen, or this. Like we have quote unquote colleagues that actively push the disinformation, and that makes the job so much harder.
Yeah.
At least one particular colleague, but
that she goes on Russia Today. I've got video. I've seen her on Russia Today. I mean RT, sorry.
RT.
But I mean, digressing from that, like it's just a different way to power a car, and that's all it should be treated as, is a different way to power a car.
Yep.
And in a lot of cases, it's probably the better way.
Yep.
It's no Lamborghini Sterrato.
No, it's not. No, it's not Lamborghini Sterrato. So you get your Lamborghini Sterrato, and then you get your Hyundai Ioniq 5N, and then you get the perfect 2-car garage.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks everybody. We'll talk to you next time, and hopefully Nicole and Russ got on their plane today, and they're heading home, and we'll have her back next week. Chad, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Everybody, make sure you go to the KirchnerReport.com and sign up.
Eat tacos.
And eat tacos.
Eat
Yes.
tacos. Donate some money for to feed the hungry, and read the Kirchner Report, not no the in there, just Kirchner Report.
That will take you to it, though. I bought
did you?
the
Okay.
as well, just in
Okay.
case. Yeah.
The link is in the show notes. So support the work that Chad's doing. He does a lot of great work, and we will
Well, it's very
definitely have
kind
you
of you to
back
say.
soon.
I appreciate it. Thank
All
you.
right. Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.